And I will again congratulate myself for remembering to hit record. I haven't missed it yet, but I would just feel so awful if I had to give the last 3 hours. Yeah,
Let's redo it.
let's recreate that somehow.
Let's get that bottled lightning again.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, welcome to whatever edition this is of Stephen Has Questions. I'm coming up on my last week of doing these, so hopefully I'll be putting them all together soon. I laid them all out in Premiere and everything. So I should have been doing this from the get-go. I'm doing it now, so I don't have to edit it back in. Half the reason anybody does this shit is to make people aware of what they do. And so to that end, later on in this, somewhere, I'm going to insert a few commercials for some of the shit that I do. Hopefully you'll like it. If you don't, it's fine. I'll try and keep them short. But, it's just independent artists, do what you do. So today with my friend Derek Rook, and he does many, 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 many things. So we won't get into that until it kind of flows from the conversation. And so we'll begin with my usual question, which is, what was the first thing as a kid that really hooked you, that really you wanted to know everything about?
Yeah, that's such a huge question. It's funny because I can't think of any one thing that really sparked I need to know everything about this, but I think kind of my first obsession, if we can consider that, as I caught this movie on TV. I was born in the early to mid 80s, and I caught this movie on TV that had all these neon glowing people, and they were throwing around frisbees, and they were talking about computer stuff. And I was trying to explain this. I had to have been 4. And I was trying to explain this movie, this high concept movie, to my parents. And back then, for people who aren't aware of what cable TV used to be like, back then they would show a movie. They would show a movie, and then they'd replay that movie on TV 4 or 5 times. And so they caught it the next day and taped it. And for those who don't already know the movie I'm talking about Tron. And I proceeded over the next several years to wear out probably 6 different VHS tapes. I watched it almost every day for a year, and then kind of so on and so forth. And I think the thing that did for me, even though it's not the thing I learned everything about Tron, I didn't learn about movie making or anything, but the thing that it got me really interested in was technology. And it really sparked this kind of lifelong pursuit of understanding how things worked and kind of what the insides of things are. Mm-hmm. I often, in my day job, think about almost as if we were inside the computer, right? Where is this going? What is this doing? What is this interacting with? And I attribute Tron. I attribute a lot of that to Tron. So that's probably where it all started, I would say. So it's funny you're wearing that shirt. I mentioned that in the pre-show, but I saw that and I was like, well, he's going to ask this question, and I know it's going to be Tron. So that's excellent.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it was just this fantastic movie, and I knew it was coming down the pipe because I was old enough that I was into science fiction magazines, so I'd buy them and be like, what is this thing, And then back then, I guess they probably still do it now. Maybe, I don't know. Do people read anymore? But they put the novelizations. So I had the novelization of Tron.
Wow.
11th birthday, we went to see it. And because it had just come out, and we went to Chuck E. Cheese, and I gave me Pac-Man stickers, and it was totally this 80s, thing. And did you ever have any of the toys?
I had one of the toys because I think it was 84, right? Tron.
Yeah.
So I was born in 84. So it was a couple years after that I was really getting into it. So not a lot of toys were out, but I participated in I don't know if you know what ARGs are, alternate reality games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. For those that don't know, they're the guerrilla marketing, the world spills into the real world and you have to solve puzzles and stuff. So I did a lot of that for the Tron Legacy. Is that the second movie? I was all in that. So we saw previews. I dragged Tanya through downtown San Diego, running through the streets as part of a scavenger hunt, which got us into Flynn's Arcade and the End of Line Club that night, which was super rad. And so, yeah, I didn't have the toys. I came later. So I had a lot of the later stuff.
I never released it, but I did a video for this song called The World Wolf, and it began like the entire premise of it in the song was being the World Wolf's big giant wolf character in my book, Destroys Places. And in the premise of the song was being from his point of view as a video game, which I really want to do. And I think that it would be it would be a first person eater. And like I had it worked out, I have it all worked out in my head. It's like you can't kill the wolf, so the entire thing is just getting from point A to point B, and then everything gets a. But the beginning of the video was walking into Flynn's arcade and then putting a quarter into that game, and then that's when the song started. Um, what a great, what a great pin to hold you to like start your wrapping your life on. I think you're one of the first people to bring that one up. But I think also I'm more of the people in the group have been, or that I've been doing this with, have been a little bit older. Um, Nathan, our boy Nathan,
Love Nathan.
never seen Tron.
What the fuck? Nathan,
What?
you're an IT dude.
Right. Yeah. So no, at one point I was like, and it was like, I remember it was a few years ago, and we synced it up, and I was like, we are watching Tron tonight.
Oh my God.
And then we watched the second one, and the second one definitely resonated with him. The first one, I think that, if you were there, you were there, but I can see why.
It's a different era of storytelling. Like tempo was much slower back then.
Mhm.
And I feel that even going back to like Blade Runner, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, but
Mhm.
I just can't sit through it most of the time anymore. Like I understand why people today have a hard time going back to see some of those older movies, because even though they resonate with me and I can still watch them and I enjoy them, like I used to always be in the mood to watch Blade Runner.
Mhm.
Nowadays I have to be in a much more relaxed or analytical mood to watch Blade Runner, because otherwise, like, I need something a little bit faster paced, because that's just I think just what we're used to these days.
I remember when the recent one came out, and
Mm-hmm.
because it was kind of tapping back into that legacy of pacing.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many people that like they went into it expecting it to be what they remember of the original, the action parts, and forgetting all. That said to me, said for me, that film is the single best comment on the human condition ever made. It's good, and then but then when you get up to the one scene where it's like, I'm going to call you Joe,
Mm-hmm.
and like it was just wow, okay, this entire thing we all of us we build it on just like this architecture of illusion of relationships, and the ones that you actually really, really have, and the ones who really know you, like that's a pretty amazing thing.
I
Um,
think they did. I think they did an incredible job in that movie of making it seem like it had a definitive ending or a definitive point, but it was so open ended that everybody kind of took a slightly different definitive point from it.
mhm.
And we may argue about this, but I'm actually not a huge Philip K. Dick fan. I don't like him as an author, but I do think that the book that Blade Runner was based on, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I think is a lot more kind of, if you can be hammer over the head, open ended, like you're not supposed to know what this is about. It's very kind of beady about it. Whereas I think the movie, the original Blade Runner, was so good at threading that needle of like, the point is obvious to everyone, but everyone had a slightly different point. And
Yeah.
I love stuff like that. I love it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the thing with Dick stuff and having ADD and having literally taken, 90 milligrams to 120 milligrams of amphetamines every day for the last 20 years and being an artist, looking at his output, I can kind of see that in there, and just kind of acutely being one of those people who's like, I'm just going to blow up and make creative shit because that's what I do.
Sure.
Looking at his output, the writing, the volume of writing, the content, it is as much of a symptom of what's going on in your head all the time. And so it is difficult sometimes to like particularly when you put that much out, to have everything wrap up really nicely in some form.
Yeah.
Ironically, I really hate that writing style. Like there's this like a whole Chuck Palahniuk school, and some of his stuff is fucking amazing. But some of his short stories, they like he put together a collection of a bunch of his students, and all of them did this. Well, here's this really cool idea,
Yeah.
and but they weren't cool enough to keep me thinking about it. Like,
Yeah.
some of his stuff, like the Nightmare Box, fucks me up because it's like, do you know the story I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it.
Basically, the story is like in an art gallery, there's a box, and every once in a while, a chime goes off. And if you do that, it'll open a little lens, and you can look through this lens, and then you lose your mind. And the part about it that fucks me up is that I'm insatiably curious. And so it's like the exact kind of trap. It's like, I know, but yeah.
Yeah. I need to know what it is that will ruin the rest of me. Yeah. Like, yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah. That's funny.
All right. So back to you. So, did you dive right into IT and that whole thing?
No, I mean, kind of like by the time I got into the workplace, I was pretty cemented in computers. But I think what ended up happening is that I have this want to understand how things work. I think it comes from the fact that my working memory is complete garbage, and so if I'm forced to memorize things, it will never work. And what I've found throughout being abysmal at school, aside from brilliant but has trouble focusing, as I'm sure many people can empathize with, like that memory, like I discovered that if I could figure out the way it worked and I could then derive complex facts, I had a much better time with that than just trying to like memorize, dates and interactions and things. It's like, well, these components build into these things and these components interact this way. Therefore, these things will interact this way. And it got me into a bunch of things, but I think that ultimately led me into video games. And I got really, really deep into different video games because I discovered that unlike the universe, video games are built on core principles that are you may not know what they are, but if you do know what they are, they're very deterministic in how they behave. And so I learned through playing MMOs that like, okay, these are the formulas for the way things interact. And there is a correct answer that can be solved. And you can know essentially the laws of physics for this micro world. And then video games started networking and all that stuff. And that's when I got into computers, as I realized, oh, well, to play games with other people, I have to know networking. And, oh, this computer's crashing, so I need to be able to diagnose it. It was the early days of dial-up internet. So there was a lot of, interesting stuff going on. Computer systems were a lot less complex back then. So it was an easier on-ramp into this stuff. And so by the time I got into high school and kind of midway through high school, I started taking whatever computer classes were in high school and then just kind of started stumbling into any computer field I could do. I ended up dropping out of high school. So my on-ramp into IT was a little diverted. I had to do tech support and, temp work and a lot of stuff like that. But what that did for me is it gave me exposure to a lot of different tech jobs and a lot of different technologies that I got to play with. And I thought I wanted to be a web developer for a while and didn't want to do that after a while. And I thought I wanted to do this for a while and just kind of like touched as much stuff as I could. And that's how I got into computers. But I didn't have a computer at home until junior year of high school. I'd go over to my friends' houses and play, on their computers and stuff. But, we didn't really have a lot growing up. So we were pretty late. In fact, our first computer at home was actually a hand-me-down from the computer lab at school because I was in a programming class and they're like, he needs a computer at home to do homework. Like he can't do this on a notebook. So like I was really kind of a latecomer to tech, but just, I guess the way my brain works, like I just absorbed into it. Like I just kind of melded into the mainframe, I guess, whatever we were using back then.
Well, do you remember what kind of machine it was?
The first computer that I had at home was a 386, and this was when Pentiums were out. So I mean, when I say a hand-me-down from which was actually pretty fortuitous, because that's how I got into Linux. Like, we were running Windows 95, I think, on this garbage machine that took forever to boot up. But what I discovered was I started learning about Linux kind of down the road, and you could tune what was running and what wasn't running. So you could make better use of shitty hardware. It doesn't do everything that the newer hardware does, the newer stuff does, but you could run smaller stuff on it. And so I got really into that. The first computer that I built at home was a Athlon K62. And that's when AMD was first coming onto the scene and kind of challenging Intel, which was an exciting time back in the day. Now they just kind of flip flop, which is better. But back then there was like a lot of competition. So yeah, I remember those computers very vividly. And I remember everybody was really scared of building computers. And luckily a friend's dad was really into computers. So he helped me pick out which parts, like why this RAM and not that RAM kind of stuff, which I didn't know yet at the time. But the building, it's like slot A into slot B, man. You can't put the wrong thing in the wrong place. They're all different shapes. And I think that was another very formative, okay, tech makes sense to me. This is something that I can just kind of look at and figure out quickly. I don't have to memorize why to do this. I can forget that information. And then when I need it, I look at it and go, oh, this goes here, that goes there. There's 5 of these slots. Does it matter which it goes in? You can look that up real fast. And that's kind of the way my brain works with everything. So tech is just a natural, it's too big for anybody to know, but it's very easy to reference. And so that's huge for me. Yeah.
I really like the phrase. That's cool. Yeah. I'm absolutely convinced the old school cases were part of some sort of cult ritual thing where it's like the more fingers we can cut inside, or the more pinpricks that we can make, the more power we get from these millions of people.
We've had the concept of rolled edged aluminum for decades, and yet they didn't come into computer cases till way later. I feel like I bled on my first 8 computers that I built. You just couldn't get away from it. Yeah. And now kids these days, they don't know how good they've got it with rolled edges and blunt glass. And that's funny.
Nathan was sending me photos of this machine that he has built, and it's all white on the inside, and there's a little green and all these little things. I'm like, where are the razor blades? Where's the little needle cluster?
So you can only, I don't know if you can even see it on the screen anymore, but I have a sim pit for spaceships and planes and stuff that I built right here, and it's all aluminum extrusions. And so I haven't bled on a computer in many years, but I bled all over this thing because it's the same kind of just sharp edges everywhere. And
yeah. Linux. So it's funny because we've always been poor, and so I've often looked into okay, hey, I got this 5-year-old handyman machine. How can I use this in order to do something more, And I could never wrap my head around it until Steam Deck.
Oh yeah.
And I still can't quite wrap my head around it, but I'm starting to get the vocabulary down, which for me is always the big beginning of that, where I'm like, oh, so in order to do this, then you're using bottles, and bottles is pretending to be windows, and or protons pretending to do this. So I guess it comes down to, if it helps me play games, I'm good at it. If it helps me actually do any work, not so much.
I think that's a big part of learning anything, though. I really struggle with picking. One thing, my superpower, if I had one, is becoming moderately proficient. I won't say that I learn it or I'm an expert in anything, but I can rapidly become passingly proficient at things very quickly. And I think the biggest barrier to doing that is finding out the vocabulary. What do I call this? How do I even search to do this thing? Yeah. And so you can look it up. And then the next barrier for me is I need to do something that matters to me. Or else, if I'm doing some arbitrary thing, I'm going to lose momentum so fast, because I'm going to hit one wall and I'm going to be like, I didn't want to program a temperature sensor anyway. It's like, that doesn't matter to me at all. But like, if your computer's overheating or your rack is overheating and you're trying to build a temperature monitor for that to kick on a fan to cool it or something, if you've got a thing that matters to you that you're like, it'd be really easy to give up right now, but I actually need this thing to fucking work.
Right.
So like, you push through it. And I think that's the big motivator. So like, for me, I mean, same thing. Games was the entry to that. I needed to know why the server was crashing. I needed to know why the guy at college halfway around the world couldn't connect to our game server. Like, we were playing X-Wing versus TIE Fighter at the time. So it was like real time, like Star Wars fighter combat. Like, you needed to have a good connection. They needed to not drop. So like troubleshooting network stuff, it wasn't about learning networking for the sake of learning networking. It was figuring out why our game wasn't working. And through that, I grew enough weird knowledge branches that they started intersecting. And I suddenly understood networking, but it wasn't, I want to learn about routing and switching and why packets do what they do. Like that, like nobody gives a shit about that. I mean, I do now, but like when you're learning, it's hard to give a shit about that.
Before we started this, we were talking about AI stuff, and I don't want to do it, but another guy, Dave McAnally, I did an interview with him, and he does search engine optimization. Like, he's got his own company that does this stuff. He was talking about how it's great as a tool for, like, when you need to whip something up, and it can whip it up. And he was like, but then I realized something, that if I make the whatever the stuff of the presentation is, or the coding or whatever, I can explain it. Whereas if the AI does it, I find that I hit these walls of like, it's not transparent for me. So just because we was thinking about the reason you learn stuff, I always think of it as my end. Like, if I'm learning a new piece of gear or whatever, it's like, my goal is like, how do I make this immediately usable right now? I don't necessarily have to do anything complex with it. I just need to be able to make it usable for what it's going to be done. Like, when I was taught how to do power chords, I was like, oh, okay, because I'd been learning broken chords, and I was like, well, yeah, this is cool and all, but power chords half an hour. Oh, okay, right, cool, got it. And everything I've ever written since then is essentially that.
It's funny you mentioned that. I took guitar lessons like 14 through 16 or something like that. I mean, at the age, I think most kids that don't play guitar anymore took guitar lessons. And I was super into punk and goth and, stuff like that. And my guitar teacher was doing probably what I would now consider the correct thing in trying to teach me about the guitar. And he wasn't going into music theory, but just trying to teach me, like, these are these notes, and here are these scales, and here are these chords, and teach me songs that incorporated them or whatever, not songs I gave a shit about. I mean, now, now I've got a much broader musical sense, but when you're 12, 13, trying to prove that you're more core than anybody else, like, you don't give a shit about like broad interests. You have your monolithic personality. And so I would just come back day after day. I'm like, teach me this punk song, teach me this punk song. And he's like, listen, after weeks of this, he's like, listen, if I teach you power chords right now, you will only ever play power chords and you will never actually learn the guitar. Like, this will be the end of your guitar journey. And I was like, I am 15. I know way more about this than you do, clearly. And he's like, all right, like, here we go. And I learned, to this day, I think I know like the same 5, Green Day or whatever other songs from that era. And I never really like learned the guitar. So instead, I picked up this monstrosity of a machine over here, the hurdy-gurdy.
Is this the hurdy-gurdy?
The hurdy-gurdy, yeah.
I saw your post about that.
This is the acoustic one, and then I've got a MIDI one up here. And it's incredible. It's probably 80 times harder to play than the guitar. I mean, like, obviously, if you're playing it like Hendrix or Page level guitar, like, whatever, but like, just, playing a simple melody on the guitar versus playing a simple melody on this is like ridiculous. Like, the Gertie's version of strumming is like 8 times more difficult. It's like rubbing your head and tapping your belly at the same time. But going back to kind of bringing this back, like, I'm so much more interested in it now than I was in the guitar at the time. The guitar at the time, I just wanted to know the guitar. I wanted to be a teenager that could play the guitar. Like that was my goal.
Yeah, it was so it was an identity thing as opposed
to yeah. And it wasn't enough to like once I hit those hard parts to like grab you. But now I'm like this, I'm so much more interested in the instrument and the music that can be played with it and the variety of music that can be played with it and how weird it is. That
I love anything with a drone.
Like, I started, I almost didn't get a Gertie because entry level Gerties are expensive. This is like an $1,800 instrument and it's like a beginner Gertie. Right. They cannot be mass fabricated. This is probably the closest that you get because it's made out of like plywood, whereas most of it's made out of hardwood entirely. But because of the shape and how temperamental of an instrument it is, it's 50% maintenance, 50% playing. And so because of that, if you try and mass produce, it's going to be garbage. eBay and Etsy are filled with like $500 Gerties that you might as well just light that $500 on fire. It's a useless instrument. And so I wanted to do bagpipes because drones are I love high contrast. And by that, I mean like almost discordant ideas that still work together. So like I love like folk metal, folk punk, like electro folk, like neo folk stuff. And I love drones, but bagpipes are so fucking loud that like I don't live like we live in a house, but our neighbors are like 6 feet that way. There's just no way I could have gotten away with bagpipes. So the Gertie was the instrument, and yeah, I love drones.
I could though.
Yeah, get it
because we live in the middle of nowhere.
You can get well, so you can get. It depends on the bagpipe, obviously, and there's like 3 main ones. Like Highland bagpipes for good ones, you're always going to pay a lot of money, but you can get a practice chanter for like $50. And then that way you can at least learn the fingering and the tuning and the music and all that. And then if you like it, you're like, this is the shit, let's go. Then you can get like Irish small pipes or, any of those other pipes for, a couple hundred, like for beginner instruments and stuff.
I think Donna's dad might actually have one. I remember when I was a kid, we lived in Northern Virginia, and there was a creek that ran through our development. And one day I walked outside and I heard it from probably a quarter mile.
Oh man!
And I walked down and kind of traced it down. There was this just dude standing by the creek playing bagpipes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
I love that shit. There's a couple bagpipe funk band or bagpipe punk bands that I've been listening to recently. One's called Black Tartan Clan, and they're in Spain for some reason. And then there's a Canadian band called the Real McKinleys, I think. But they've got a lot of like bagpipe fronted punk, and it's just incredible. You might actually really like this. This is a MIDI Gertie.
Yeah, I know that they exist. Yeah.
Yeah, they're called the Digi Gertie. You can pick them up. He makes them. You can get plans online if you want to build them. I know you're handy with the soldering iron, so you can just get the plans online and build them. But he sells them for like, I think they're like 500 euros, maybe 600 shipped. Yeah. But it's a full MIDI instrument, so you can program the drones and everything you want through this, and it's awesome. You might have a good time playing with it.
That guitar thing that I built, like, how it's got this throttle on it, and I want to put a flywheel on it. I've got this idea where it's like almost like riding a bike, where it's like you're doing this and the flywheel keeps going and kind of viscerally feeling the tempo that you're playing at. I just think that's a really cool idea, and like so. But I'm not quite that. I'm just glad that I got the fucking thing to work the way I want. So I don't want to keep dicking with it.
Well, also like flywheels can be dangerous. Like you get that thing spinning fast enough, it's got its own inertia. Like like how do you stop it? You need like a brake. Then you've got your own pyrotechnics part of the show. The brakes just shooting out sparks. That'd be pretty sick, actually.
Yeah. So do you know the acoustic reason that the drone stuff? One of the reasons, anyway, other than just aesthetics, is interesting to us.
Not psychologically. I know the origins of drone actually comes from the church. And they held that droning sounds were godly. That's why like old school orchestral stuff was very like,
Mhm.
you'd have a drone through the middle and they'd only do like a couple notes
Mhm.
outside of that.
Yeah.
That's actually where the Gertie comes from, is the organestrum was this 2-person like monstrosity
Mm.
of a thing. And then it eventually became that. But I mean, if you know the,
Well,
like the auditory.
I know some of it. So the reason synths are fat, right? That fat sound. So the way you get that is you have oscillators. Oscillators are where the sound comes from. They're originally they were like virtually spinning things, whatever. You offset the pitch on them so that one's slightly bright and one's slightly dark, so just slightly out of tune. And so what you get is they kind of cancel each other out, but they're shooting all these waves out. And the waves create this interference pattern. So our brains, you can play an electric guitar and an acoustic guitar at exactly the same decibel, and the electric will sound to you louder, because the more complex the sound is, the more interested your brain gets in it. So like, it's just like, that's a really interesting thing. Whereas like if you just take a normal sine wave or whatever, like that's why when you get into like subtractive synthesis and stuff like that, like you can take, so you got your sine wave, but then you throw another wave at it and they kind of go, whoa, and that's when you start to get those really complex, interesting sounds.
I just watched, maybe it was like a month or two ago, but there was a Veritasium video about sound waves, but it was analyzing organs. And there's this concept of like, I'm going to mess up the term for this, but there's this like harmonic something or other where organs utilize a trick basically. And it's similar to what it sounds like you're talking about, where they can project lower tones than what the actual pipes are set up to do, because the specific chords that you play build this like harmonic lower than they are. And it like tricks your brain into hearing like all these like fuller sounds and fuller notes, even though again, like that pipe organ can't actually produce that note by itself.
Yeah, but it might actually be on a physical level, though. It might be the physicality of the waveform joining with another one and creating a larger pattern. My other favorite trivia for that kind of stuff is that it takes 8 feet for a bass wave to properly go from trough to tip. So if you're standing in front of a bass cabinet, you want to stand further back if you really want to feel what's happening.
Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of cool is one of the theories about ghosts is in stone cellars, you'll have like these areas that are dropped down, and you'll get like a standing wave inside it. And that's why you'll go down there and you'll feel like something's weird, but you can't put your finger on what it is. It's because
you can't hear it.
Wave kind of going there. Yeah. I always want to get, if somebody, when we're rich, I want to get a bunch of air mover fans, put them along the front of a stage that are triggered by the low end of the bass, so they go off. So you feel that.
Oh yeah.
Like to create this illusion of volume and lower energy just by moving air instead of.
Right. Which is, I mean, on it, like this is what I meant earlier by like if you like the more you know at the foundational level, like the more you can kind of infer stuff higher level. But like essentially what you're doing by throwing that air out is just like a really low frequency like pressure wave anyways. I mean, like sound at its base level is just a pressure wave that's such a high frequency that you can hear it through our hearing sensors, That's interesting. I have a lot of these, when I'm rich ideas, but like I actually think I think about you a lot when I think about this, because I think it'd be fun to collaborate with you on. But I would love to set up. I'm not a fan of what Airbnb has done to neighborhoods. However, what I would love to do is set up like a destination Airbnb that is a like haunted house experience. And so you take this dilapidated piece of shit house, you go in and you fully renovate it, but you don't actually make it nicer. But you like tear down the walls, you put in speakers in the walls, you set up like magnetic sensors in the walls and like all this stuff, so that you almost have this kind of escape room experience where you come in and there's like the guest list, and the guest list has a mention of another room that had a weird feeling in it. And you go in there and you kind of like get these different, you get these slightly subaudible sound waves going through a room, and you're like, wow, this is really creepy. And then like a two-way mirror like flips on, and suddenly you're seeing a reflection, kind of stuff. Like, I would love to set up kind of like one night, like you're not trying to sell a vacation home. You're just like, kind of one night experiences sort of stuff. I think that would be so rad. And you talking about that sounding wave basement kind of got me thinking that, about different ways you can make it weird and make it freaky.
Imagine putting like a good, strong electromagnets in the walls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Strong enough that, like, I don't know, people with like maybe a little metal in their glasses just feel
just a little tug,
a little bit, or maybe they pulse off and on.
Mm-hmm,
So you just like, because we're all going to have something that's going to react to it on us.
Absolutely.
Not enough to like,
even if it's just a watch and you kind of get your arm just feels a little bit of a tug,
Right. Yeah.
That's I think like little stuff like that. Like, I think a lot about that whole, sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which I think is overquoted and overanalyzed. But I think at its root, like, you can use technology, and this is the reason I'm in technology, but like, you can use modern technology to be magic, right? Like, that's what a lot of modern magic is harnessing technology in interesting, transparent ways that isn't immediately obvious what's going on, and doing this on a grander scale for the purpose of illusion, I think is really neat. A lot of escape rooms do that today. Like, there's a lot of cool, neat technology tricks that like allow them to transport you to a spaceship or some magician's castle or something, and make you feel like you're really there, because what you're seeing is disguised technology to make it look like magic. And that's fun stuff. I'm a big fan of that.
That segues actually very nicely into your job, which is, to a degree, fooling people and exploiting things like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, so yeah, it's interesting. So my job is I am a offensive security practice lead. But ostensibly what that means is I run and lead hacking teams. I've done this for almost 10 years now. I've built 2 different offensive security practices at different companies now from scratch. So kind of ground up, hiring the people, designing the programs, and what we'll do and why. There's interesting nuances to like what my job is and why my job exists. When I was first getting into security, I had been in tech for a little bit, mostly tech support and kind of temp jobs and stuff. And I heard this story from somebody, I think it was a tutor or somebody at some training I was taking. And they were talking about this guy that like is hired by, the military or whoever to like break into military bases and like, buy convincing outfits from surplus stores and like get on base and then get into the server room and do hacking. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, that's amazing. Like
as close as you get to being like a
spy
type spy.
Yeah. Like, well, and I had a dubious youth, like I think a lot of us had, various shaded backgrounds, and like, I don't want to, derail my life by, going to jail. So if I can just do shady shit professionally with consent, then like all the better. Honestly, like, I think Sneakers, like in anything in Hollywood, I think Sneakers does the best job of kind of showing what this is like, except for the international intrigue, right? Like there's not a lot of that, but yeah. So when I getting into this, kind of like the reason I think a lot of people get into anything is like, that looks badass. I want to do that badass looking thing. And it's always much more complicated and nuanced than that. What I have found is, and the way I describe my job now is, my job is a couple things. One is to help people highlight risks that are maybe less apparent or less obvious, maybe a little more hypothetical, like, oh, we think this could be a problem, or, we know it's a problem, but we don't know how bad of a problem it is. And so our job is to turn hypothetical risk into realized risk by actually showing you how bad it is. Like, is your web server vulnerable? Maybe. Is your server vulnerable? Yes. And here is all your source code, or here is your customer's, credit card numbers, or whatever that may be. You want somebody doing that for you to do it, not somebody doing that for them to do it. Right. The other part of my job is to help rapidly mature defensive organizations. So it's kind of like a technical component where you're analyzing computer systems, technical systems, physical security systems, whatever, finding gaps in their security and exploiting them, seeing how far you can take it. Then there's the people side of it, which I think is much more important, which are the people who do monitoring and alerting, the people that do the response, whether that's physical or cyber response. So are they handling alerts and doing digital forensics to find out what's going on and clamp down on the activity and kick people out? Are they physical responders? Are they the security guards that are, maybe the ones getting tricked into letting you come in? Or are they the ones showing up to a suspicious person in a server room saying, hey, what are you doing? You don't want their first time or even their next time doing this to be in the middle of a crisis. You want them to be practiced and have that muscle memory down so that they're not making hard decisions in the moment. Decisions in the moment should be like small, nuanced, like in this instance, I need to react this way kind of stuff. You don't want to be thinking, is this going to be a legal thing or is this going to be an internal thing? Like that's not what they should be worried about. They should be, is this person dangerous or is this person lost? Does this person in a crisis and they need help, or is this person threatening? Like that's the things they should be worried about. So designing and executing engagements that help people go through simulations of these emergencies and stuff. And so that's a lot of what we do as well. But one of the turning points I think that this job helped me understand is I used to just be really into technology because technology was rad. I used to be into junior high school. We read like a theoretical physics book, and I just got really into higher dimensional theory and hypothetical physics or theoretical physics and stuff like that. But when I get into high school, I didn't want to take physics or biology because I was like, okay, that's boring science. Like I want to do this cool science, because at the time it was just like these things existed in a vacuum. And getting into security and specifically hacking and social engineering and stuff like that, I realized that like these technology stacks don't exist to be hacked and to be secured. Like nobody secures their technology stack because it's the right thing to do. Secure their technology stack so that it can continue doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is providing healthcare services or, standing up a game or, whatever that point is. And I think it really clued me into like people and technology. Like technology started when we started rubbing two rocks together, two sticks together and made fire. Technology is a vehicle to improve people's lives, their experience, whatever that is. And so IT and OT and security and all that stuff is the way that we ensure that technology continues doing what it's supposed to do.
OT?
Yeah.
I don't think I've actually heard that term.
OT is operational technology. Okay. That's stuff like factories and manufacturing lines and
like
stuff.
Infrastructure.
But very specifically like mechanical factory stuff. So the only cyber part of OT is like you'll have like programmable like sensors and switches that control when this thing does that, but they're usually much higher sensitivity to certain risks, much lower sensitivity to other risks, kind of stuff. So uptime is important, safety is important, consistency is important. They're usually a lot less concerned about patching and being up to date. They're like, look, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of shit. So it's a very different operating mentality when you're in OT versus IT.
So you really were kind of perfect for this because you got the technology part down, but also just an innate interest in social dynamics and the, like I am not by nature a social animal. I don't do like part of this is why this is a thing is because I don't do small talk well, but there's people like you or again, Nathan, I texted him the other day. I was like, we name drop you on a fairly regular basis for these things. But he was like, is that good? But somebody was just saying how they envy Nathan's ability to sit down and talk with anyone and just be there and present and engaged with it, And I imagine that is a very, very good skill, at least to be able to mimic, if not actually be there and mean for trying to not just teaching, but also engaging for other reasons.
Yeah, I mean, so like when I started learning social engineering as like a discipline, more than just like this idea that we're social creatures, social engineering, I think, gets a lot of play from people who aren't familiar with it as a way to trick people. Like you learn social engineering so you can lie to people and make them do what they want, do what you want. But social engineering, much like any engineering, is like learning the rules of conduct for a thing. It's understanding how people react in certain ways and like what puts people on edge versus, like puts people at ease. And that can, as with anything, that can be used for manipulative purposes, but it's also useful for talking to a boss when you want a raise, or setting expectations in a business environment, or setting expectations in a social environment, like understanding how to set boundaries without without putting people on edge, or understanding how to communicate or empathize with people. But what's funny is it's not something, and I see a lot of people, like new people to security and social engineering is kind of, a lot of people that do social engineering specialize in it. And I have a couple of friends that's like what they do. And while they are also technical, like they would consider me more technical, and I consider them way better at social engineering because it's a different kind of a thing. But when people get into hacking, they learn about social engineering. They think it's the way to, you can just pull these levers and the things work. But actually you can't employ social engineering and not mean it, because people are perceptive. And again, we're social creatures. We pick up on things, and it's sort of like, it's very easy to tell when a smile is not genuine. It's very easy to tell, like, if somebody actually yawns, almost everybody in the room is going to yawn. But if somebody fake yawns, nobody gives a shit. Like, we are very perceptive creatures in general. So like, that's something that that's something that I instill on my team members a lot, is like, we can come in and have the best findings in the world, the best vulnerability findings in the world, and just be technically perfect and essentially come across as if we're calling somebody's baby ugly, because we did not come at it with a sense of genuine intention to help. We came at it of we're here to tell you all the things you did wrong. But we could say almost the exact same words, but genuinely mean, like, we're here, like, and really, like, the only thing that changes is our the way we exist in the room with them. Like, the words might not even change that much, but because we're there, because we genuinely care about the thing that they're doing and the thing that we're all trying to accomplish, either for the business or for the product or the customers or whoever, like, we're trying to help them, then the message comes across a lot differently, and we unlock a level of cooperation that, frankly, like, people call us offensive security for a reason. Like, it's very adversarial sometimes. Like, people don't want to work with us because they just assume we're going to make work for them and call their work stupid and call them dumb. But my teams have a high success rate of working with people because we're there to help them. And that's a form of social engineering too. It's not trying to get them to do something they don't want to do, or trick them. It's just, how do you obey the unwritten rules of social interaction? And so, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think a certain level of curiosity really helps. Like, you say you're bad at small talk, but I don't necessarily think that's true, because you're so curious. Like, it's easy for you to sit down and like talk to somebody and like be genuinely interested in what they have to say, because you're genuinely curious. And, even if it's something weird and niche, as long as that person, I think this really hits on the point of this whole series that you're doing, but if that person's really interested in it, who cares if it's niche? Like, it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and to me, that's all social interaction is for me. I mean, a lot of early drug use, like, I was very shy and quiet and not really talkative or interactive much at all. I did a lot of ecstasy as a younger person, and like, that changed me pretty considerably, but I don't know that it helped my social capability so much as just allowed me to express my curiosity more. And that's really what I lean on when I talk to people is I just want them to tell me about the shit that they're, you know, interested in. And then they'll usually overshare, and then we can use that for whatever purposes we need to. So
it's funny that you mentioned how I interact, because I was just, as you were talking about, I was thinking about how almost all of the personality that I use in the world with people, it comes down to is a direct response to the fact that being autistic, and this kind of like for years, like if I don't have anything to say, I don't say it. And if I need to say something or I want to say something, I'm not going to worry about nuances. I'm just trying to be clear, and it doesn't go well often. So I realized, you know, as my career as an artist became more of a real world thing, that I had to learn how to get people on my side to want to help me do what I want to do, so that we're all getting something out of it, even if it is just, hey, I am helping this guy doing this thing that's cool. So I have spent an awful lot of time trying to learn how to do that, or failing that on a manipulative way necessarily, being extremely blunt and just being like, look, this is what I do. I think that what I do matters, and I think it contributes to society. You have bought my stuff over the years, and so I'm assuming that you also think that. Therefore, would you be interested? Basically, you have something I don't, which is money. I want some of that money so that I can do this thing, which I think is contributing, and you can help me do that.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is as simple as that. And I've literally written to people occasionally, been like, hi, you have money and I don't. But here's the stuff. And you know, sometimes it works, more often than not it doesn't, and people think I'm weird or whatever. But I have definitely, being with Donna has gone a long way. I was talking to somebody about this book called Night Film, and it's essentially the artist is sociopath. And you know, and I look and I read it, and on one hand, I'm like, yeah, you know, that's rough, that's hardcore, because this guy's like Stanley Kubrick on crack. On the other hand, there's like, oh, I wish I didn't have to worry about things like that, like, and, you know, making sure somebody doesn't break their arm doing some sort of cool idea that would result in a really neat art thing, you know. And so, you know, and Donna is so much to blame for that, because she's always so good. It's like, you know, hey, you know, people are their own thing, and they think and they have feelings, and you got to say things in a way that's not going to hurt them if you're still going to try and move forward with this relationship with them. Oh, you know, so it's definitely something I've learned, and it's something that I feel much better about. I learned years ago, you know, I'll do this thing where I'm like, I'm the best, you know, I'll say that kind of shit on Facebook or whatever. And that came out of the fact that, like, one day when I was younger, I was telling somebody about this thing that I was really excited about, that I'd been working towards. And then I hear back, it's like, oh, Stephen was bragging about this thing. I'm like, no, I wasn't. I'm excited and proud that it worked. And it wasn't like I'm bragging about it. You're my friend, and I'd like to think that that's, you know, that works, and that you'd want that. But it was, eventually I was just like, fine, okay, cool. Yes, I'm the best. I'm the best at this. I'm the best at that. Screw you. So fine, if that's what I think I am, then fine. Okay, cool, whatever. So, you know, it's yeah, learning to do those, to have that. And I think when you do get into this kind of like, oh, this is the thing you love, that's like, that's cool, because then we can really get into it. And because 90% of the time, even if it's some sort of like, well, you make one-side pink widgets, well, somehow that's probably something in there that can apply to what I do, and then I can learn from it. And if not, I just get to ride the high of somebody else being excited, which is really cool. So, like, I was thinking about that with getting into conversations like this. I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that too, because that's fun. You know, it's like, I know this is about you, but hey, this is a cool thing too, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's for any fellow travelers in the autistic thing, like learning to sometimes it seems like it's not worth it, or it's like, why can't we all just say what's on our minds? And well, yeah, the large chunk of the country does, or the world doesn't think like that. And there are these nuances and stuff. And so learning the nuances is a really good way to grease that. And, uh, you know, and then you get to have these cool conversations.
I think, yeah, I think there's two like main themes that I picked up in there. One is I think that people being more straight to the point when it comes to objectives and like boundaries is becoming more common.
Mhm.
Like I find that it's very disarming in a good way. Like disalarming, I guess is maybe a better, because disarming can be potentially negative, but it's disalarming sometimes when you kind of come into a conversation and be like, look, this is the point of what I'm about to say. Please don't read further into it, you know, or like the number of times, and especially being on kind of the benevolent bad guy, as I sometimes call it, like most of my skill sets are traditionally bad. I am an incredible, and this is as humbly as I can put this, I am a fantastic liar. I am very creative, and I know the way a lot of things work well enough that I can use them immorally, which I think is important because it means that like people just kind of know intuitively that I'm all about consent, because like consent's a big thing in hacking. If you don't have it, then you're a crook, and if you do have it, then you know you've got a good job. But like because of that, I'm often very hyper aware of like risky scenarios, like at bars or clubs and things. And so there have been points where I'm like, I will just walk over to a woman. I'll be like, listen, I'm married. It's my wife over there. I'm not trying to pick up on you, but like, I just wanted to let you know that like you're 3 feet from your drink, and like, this is not a good thing to be doing. Or, you know, like that kind of, we were in New Orleans. I actually got like the burlesque Green Fairies phone number at a bar, because she like got up and walked her. She was on a break. She got up and walked away and just left her drink there. And when she came back, I was like, hey, like I'm here with my friends. They're all rad. Say hi. I was with Melissa. I think you know Melissa Bishoping. Yeah. We were all in New Orleans for a conference, and I was like,
she's also gone down the same.
Yeah, she's in the same. I work with her actually. She works at the same company as me. Yeah. But I was just like, hey, like, just wanted to give you a heads up. Like, you don't know us, and I was alone with your drink for a long time. Like, just please be careful with that kind of stuff. And just having that kind of like quick, like, listen, I'm not this hitting on you is not what this is about. I understand I'm a guy at a bar, but like, let's cut through that bullshit so that we can get to the point. I think I've been seeing a lot more of that communication happen, and I think it's good. I think that we've been taught over the years and over the decades to like always be roundabout with our communication and kind of hide feelings and stuff. And I think modern day people are just kind of, it's not gone, but I think it's kind of going away, or at least being reduced. The other big thing that I wanted to comment on that I think is really important about what you just said, and I think what a lot of people struggle with, is like, you are able to shape the way you interact with people, and like you're able to grow based on learnings. And like there is always like, look, this is the type of person I am, and this is how I react to things, and this is how I process information. Like the point of this is not that you have to change who you are, but it is absolutely possible to like learn about social interaction and people and think about how that applies to you and change that. And I think one of the problems that we have, not to get too far down into like sociology, but I think one of the problems that we have right now is that people have a really strong bias towards their self-image and what they think about themselves, and to the exclusion of their actions contradicting what they think about themselves. And so we have such like a hard, visceral, like aversion to when anything that happens challenges the way we think about ourselves, that we like double and triple down in certain behaviors. But this ability to analyze how we've behaved or how our actions like impact people that we interact with, and are able to think about like, did I want that to happen? Or did I not? If you wanted that to happen, fine. Like, look, I will always be a jerk to people who are being jerks. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, fuck those guys. Like, I'll be nice up front because how I behave says everything about me, and how they behave says everything about them. So like, I don't give a shit. But like, if I do something that I am happy with and it pisses somebody else off and I don't care about them, then fine. But if I did something that I was happy with at the time and it pissed somebody off that I didn't want to piss off, then that's a moment of self-reflection. That's okay, did I do something wrong? Did I not communicate well enough? Did I communicate in the wrong way? Did I whatever? And that's a learning moment. And I think if more people did that, I think that would be swell. You don't need massive changes. Like, people don't need to be chameleons and not be themselves. But like, I think it's important to say, like this, well, I'm sorry you got upset. It's like, well, I'm sorry. Let me think about that again. I'm sorry that what I did upset you. And that was not my intention of doing that thing. And so I will reevaluate, like, should I just not do that thing? Is there a better way I could have done that? I think that's where a lot of this cut through the bullshit of my intention is this. You know, like, so if I come at it sideways, I apologize, but like, this is where I'm driving towards, and I think can help disarm a lot of that miscommunication. But people can have this very like almost physical aversion to that self-reflection. It's very difficult the first couple of times you do it. I think it's like a muscle. The more you do that self-reflection, the more you recognize, like, it's like people who are like, well, I'm not a racist, so the thing I said wasn't racist. It's like, well, let's think about that differently. You're not a racist, so maybe you shouldn't say racist shit. Like, and if you have that kind of self-evaluation of like, well, I thought this was okay, but it clearly wasn't. And if I want my reality to be in line with my self-image, then I need to align those. Like, I can't just go through with this delusion. So that's another part of social engineering. It's not just other people, but kind of like evaluating, you know, how you're built and what your architecture is and how to maneuver that through situations as well.
I can't imagine that you would need it, but there's a book that I'd be surprised if you hadn't read, Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me.
Oh, I have not read that.
It's fucking fantastic. It's cognitive dissonance. And the reason that, I swear this chair is shrinking. Anyway, it's the thing about it is, if you read it and you really, really get it, it makes it almost impossible for you to keep lying to yourself about shit, because it's like, you know, I bought that thing. Was it a good purchase? Well, I'm a good person, therefore it was a good purchase, you know, and learning to kind of go, okay, well, right, but, you know, so maybe, no, that wasn't a good person or a good purchase. You can still be a good person. It doesn't directly relate to that value, but, you know, when you're able to start really recognizing that, then like, anytime you have these moments of like, just that little chemical twinge of something you did maybe isn't right or whatever. And it's like, well, okay, why? Because that's it's reflecting somehow to myself how I see myself. And, you know, and you know, so it's definitely one of those things that really it fucks you up, because you have to be accountable for yourself if you want, because now you know how the machine works. I think
recognizing failure is like a skill and a muscle that we're not taught to do and to exercise. But it's fascinating how much celebrating. In fact, like, one of the taglines for my training company is like, celebrate failure until success, because like, it's just like, it's, and what's wild is there's this common phrase in tech that's like, fail fast or move fast and break things. But the difference between fail fast and celebrate failure is analyzing that failure and learning from it, rather than just saying, this isn't working, move on to the next thing or restart or whatever. Like, that is empty practice. That is like not deliberate practice. That's the practice that you're just going through the motions, but you're not reinforcing anything. Whereas celebrating failure is learning to recognize failure, understanding how you got there, and then modifying whatever got you there to going on somewhere else. And sometimes being okay with failure. I think as a society, we're kind of like, well, that's not the perfect solution, therefore it is a bad solution. It's like, no, sometimes it is perfectly fine. And I had to see this a lot in technology. It is perfectly fine not to fix everything in one fucking go. It's like, this is non-optimal, and it is perfectly okay being non-optimal because we've got like all this other shit going on, you know? And it's like, I think Hank Green is a YouTuber that I watch, and he's like he runs the SciShow and a bunch of other YouTube channels that are all about learning. But he has this habit that I really love, and I'm trying to start to do more, which is, because he's a science communicator, people ask him all kinds of questions. And something he does is like, I don't know the answer to that. There is an answer. I just don't know it, because like, I think we are in this world, we're in this very divisive binary world where like only one thing or another is true. And we have this societal kind of mental state where if someone doesn't know the answer, then it is unknowable. Right. And like, no, I just can't explain it. There is an explanation. It's just like, I personally don't know what it is. And I think being comfortable with, I don't know what it is. I could hazard a guess, but it's based on nothing, so I'm not going to. Like, someone knows the answer to this.
Right.
Like, it's just not me, and it's not right now. And like, being comfortable with that, I think we just kind of go, well, I'm going to extrapolate, and we'll come to a conclusion that I now feel is correct. And it's like,
right, even though it's totally unrelated to the actual thing.
Sometimes that's useful. Sometimes it's useful to extrapolate and come up with a hypothesis and say, this hypothesis is good enough for now while we work on this stuff. Other times it's better to just be like, we don't know. Yeah. You know, and so I think, you know, recognizing failure, learning from failure, and then being comfortable with failure, just being failure and being like, that didn't work. It doesn't need to be fixed. Like, how
there's almost fetishization on ignorance. Like, like if I don't know, you know, it's better to not know than be one of those guys over there who know everything, and because that makes me feel stupid. But at the same time, being absolutely convinced you're right, even though you don't know what you're talking about. You know? Like suddenly everybody's an expert on blah blah blah, and it's like, well, you know, it's that fear of being incomplete. I think you know, it's that personally, like, it's really telling to see people's opinion on science and scientists. First of all, is science a noun or a verb? I think is like a really important distinction that I think a lot of people that don't do science get wrong. Like, science is a process. Science is not a result. Right. Science is not knowledge. It is the pursuit of knowledge. It is the way that we is a system for getting to something we can all agree on.
Objective fact, right? Independently verifiable. That's something I learned from Adam Savage from Mythbusters, is like, there's no such thing as a fact that cannot be independently verified. So like, science is this verb, but also like this, a good separating question between how people think about things is what if you're wrong? And the reaction to that is so fascinating, because the people I think that are true skeptics are excited about that idea. Yeah. Because if you're wrong, you're learning something you don't know.
And there's more to know, and
there's more to
a new piece of data.
Yeah. And when people are scared of that fact, there's one of two things is happening. One is they're not comfortable with being incomplete, or the subject that they could be wrong about is just so inherently tied to
their belief system.
Well, their belief system, their self-worth, their livelihood, whatever. They depend on that thing. And so if they're wrong about it, there's it's all over the place. Two ADHD people on a podcast, ladies and gentlemen. But there's a really great documentary. I hope it's still on Netflix, that I tell everybody to watch. It's called, what is it called? I haven't watched it in a while. Is it called Beyond the Horizon? It's a Flat Earthers documentary.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yes.
So they prove it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what I loved about it is a few things. One is, at no point is the documentary ever look at these fucking idiots.
Yes.
Like at no point. This person follows them, takes them seriously, asks them interesting questions, is genuinely interested in the response. The closing monologue, I think, is fantastic, where I think it's a JPL scientist, is basically talking about like, this isn't something to dunk on. Like, these are skeptics that are trying to understand the way things work, and they have been left behind by science communicators. And like, this is not a triumph to have. It is something that we need to kind of reach back and try and lift people up from. But in the middle, there was a question, just this really poignant question. He socially engineers them into a very honest and kind of vulnerable like conversation that they're having. And he just comes out and he's like, is there anything that could happen that would change your mind? Mm-hmm. And the responses, this is what your comment reminded me of, that is the responses were essentially like, I'm so far down this road that like, if I'm wrong, like, I don't know what's real anymore. And so the answer is essentially no.
Your entire network.
Yeah.
Because most of those people have, and much like the MAGA thing, have pushed away all of the people that are not that.
Sure.
So now like all they have is this. And if that little pedestal is proven wrong,
yeah, your entire
it and you lose everything.
Yeah, your entire self-image is shattered, right? There's no more you anymore, right? Yeah, I mean, it also talk about social engineering. Social engineering is fascinating when you start like learning about it, and how like you can manipulate bias or reinforce bias and kind of like get people into these weird like cycles of acceptance, and this basically reinforcing confirmation bias, to like kind of maneuver people down these paths. But if you look at modern missionaries don't do what missionaries used to do. Missionaries used to, I mean, self-serving for the church, but missionaries would go out into a society that the church felt was underdeveloped and undercultured, right or wrong. I'm not going to talk about that part of it, but the point was to go provide services,
spread the word of God,
uplift, spread the word of God, but in doing so also like raise up, they'd build homes and stuff like that. And there are still some of those missions that take place. They still do go to quote unquote third world countries and build schools and stuff. That does still exist. I'm not trying to say that doesn't. However, the missionaries that are going door to door in your neighborhood are not building schools. They're not lifting up people. What they are doing is that they are new people to the church, being sent out into a hostile environment and being showed that the only people that truly understand them and aren't hostile to them are the church themselves. Like, they know that a better way to recruit people is to hold fundraisers and, sponsor school events and hold bake sales and do food drives. And like, that is all proven to recruit much better. Mm-hmm. The point of local missions is to insulate these new members and kind of build this monolithic identity based on one or a few things. Ad algorithms are the same way. Like, if you ever search a thing, suddenly all of your ads are that, all of your YouTube videos are around that. Everything that you're served is trying to build you into this monolithic identity because it's easier to sell to you, it's easier to manipulate, it's easier to guide perspectives and information that you're consuming, the more monolithic we are. So like, watching all that, it's weird because people talk about TikTok or other modern internet phenomenons, and it's funny because I am that old guy that's not on it, but it's not because I don't understand it. It's not because I don't have an account. It's not because I'm not on it. It's just I recognize like the overt manipulation that's happening on some of this stuff, and it just doesn't do anything for me. Like, I'm just like, I look at it and I'm like, man, this would be really cool if it actually served me shit that I care about, but it's just trying to get me into this one pillar of things. So yeah. Technology is great. It's also evil. Yeah. So
I want to drop back and address something that just I found really, really useful for me when I was. So I hate passive aggressive. It drives me fucking nuts.
Hmm.
If you want me to do something, please, I want to help you. Just
Yeah.
what you need. And as I mentioned, Donna's mother was a therapist, and but she would do that sometimes. And we've been together for 25 years. You're going to get that kind of thing. But I called her on it, and she got a lot better about it. But at one point, she said something that had never occurred to me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. You know, with the barely empathy that I have that was there, it really got there because she was like, sometimes people do this because they had to learn that this was the only way they could get something. Where
Hmm.
it just said, I just want this or I need this thing, you know, their parents or their whatever, the people, whoever ran the thing would not allow that. Like, so you had to learn how to do that. And so it is ingrained in you that that is how you interact with people when you want something. And that really helped me get past my aversion to for stupidly taking it very personally because
Oh yeah.
there's this innate thing. It's like, what do you think? I'm stupid? Of course I understand what you're doing. Why don't you just ask me? You know, and I had what fuck was it? There was one other thing. There was right before. I hate ADD. I hate the fact that there are just these holes where ideas fall out of.
Hmm.
Damn it. Oh, I remember. We were talking about how going into a conversation with a certain intent, and again, hating the idea of manipulating people when I just want because I never want to be perceived as that.
Hmm.
I'm trying to come at you as an adult, this even keel of this is what I'm trying to accomplish, and I don't want there to be any confusion about that. So I have periodically written people and said like, at the end of this, I'm going to be asking you for a huge favor or money or whatever.
Yeah.
First sentence, and then explain all of it because to me it's like I would hate for somebody to because I know how I would feel. It's like, oh, you wrote all this entire preamble up just to get to this one thing. Whereas if you
Hmm.
just said that one thing and then kind of give me the reason for it, it's like, oh, okay, cool, that's fine. But I also so it's finding that balance to do. Last night I was talking to my friend Michael Dean, who is a five-star chef. And he had some really cool observations. I'm not going to get them quite right, but so I encourage you to watch it when you get a chance, because so much of what he does is working with teams and getting
Hmm.
everybody to do the thing. And he was talking about how he had developed this kind of system for dealing with a problem, like his employee did something wrong.
Hmm.
And now we have to have a conversation about it. But he's talking about how here is the architecture for the conversation. These are what the expectations were. Did you have enough information? Did you have enough of what you needed in order to do the thing that I expected you? Because if you didn't, then that's on me.
Right.
So, uh, or did you have all of that and you just didn't, you made a mistake? Fine. Or were you negligent or whatever? You know, it's like, and it's kind of removing the emotional content to allow for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Another thing that this guy Chris Lewis, who I did this with, he's a career, well, was a career military guy, and he had reached the top level you can be for an enlisted person. So it's like sergeant something super.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like an NCO.
maybe I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But he at one point the Army said, "Hey, guess what? You're going to be a crap." There it is again. Uh, um, Emery, a drill sergeant,
Hmm.
and he was like, "Okay, guess I'm going to be a drill sergeant." And so we talked about that stereotype of how you're interacting with people. And one of the things I thought was really interesting before I digress was the whole yelling at you as soon as you get out the bus thing. That's
Hmm.
And I was like, so psychologically, is that basically so they immediately know this is what your relationship is to this situation? It breaks you out of ever, you know, it's like, there's no self anymore. You are a tool. And he was like, yes, that's exactly what it was, which I thought was really interesting. But he was like, so, but the first day I will walk in and it's just like in the movie, everybody is, you know, at the end of their bunks. And I will take my hat off and I will go, okay, I am here to help you. I am here to teach you these things. If you have a problem, come to me. Let's figure all of this stuff out. Hat goes back on, yelling happens, and all that. And I love that. I love that. I have had to do that on tour, where like we bring an opening band out, and I'm like, I don't care if you're the biggest, baddest industrial band in the world. If you don't listen to Donna when she tells you to do something, it will be bad. like she knows more about this than anybody else I know. She has bigger balls than all of you combined. So please, all I'm asking is if she says to do something, do it for all of our sakes, and it's like now we can go back to being friends, but we need to make sure that and what you said about boundaries is what really got me thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
one of my favorite things is being in other people's bands because
yeah.
I don't need this. You tell me what you want me to do, I will do that. And I don't have to worry about promotion. I don't have to worry about dick. And so you have those established, this is what your role is.
Do you, I love that too. One thing I love doing, and I'm curious if you have a similar, like experiences. I really love going into things that I would traditionally be too senior for and pretending, not pretending to anybody else. Most people that I work with in my industry, like, know that I am pretty high up now. So it's not like I'm trying to pass off as being nobody, but I pretend to myself. I try and get rid of any ego at all. And it's like, I have never done this before. Like, tell me what you want me to do. If I'm not doing it the way you want it done, like, don't be like, oh, well, I'm not going to tell him what to do because he knows what to do. Fuck that. Like, I want to know, because I love seeing other people's processes. I love learning the tools that other people use. And sometimes like I'll run into something that I have been doing the hard way for decades. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh yeah, there's this, I ran into this a lot in construction when I did construction with my dad, like other lifetimes ago. But like, you like, I've been solving this problem with hammer and nails. And it's like, dude, there's a tool for that. Like, there's a tool for that. That takes you 5 hours. This takes me 30 minutes. And it's like, I love that, but you can't do that if you come into somebody else's house and try and be the head chef.
Right.
Like, you can't, because they're just going to be like, well, they know what they're doing, so I'm not going to give them any feedback. And it's like, man, I'm a neophyte. Just tell me how you want it done. Mm-hmm. It's the best. Yeah.
Two stories about that. So one, it's amazing the things that, if you're open to that kind of thing, that you can learn. I remember reading an interview with Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, and this was like 15, 20 years into his career. He was like, I have been playing flute wrong my entire career. And so now I have to relearn how to play it properly. For me, I since I don't really work with people except the band, it's kind of like, this is your job, go do your job. And if there's a problem, we'll figure it out. But for myself, when I meet people who know how to do things, I don't. I randomly met another artist, a local artist, and I think her name named Anne, and you meet them at an artist club. It's like, I'm an artist. I'm like, of course you are. And then they show it to you, and I was like, holy shit, you're doing the thing that I can't figure out how to do. And all of a sudden I got real interested because, for me, like with painting, I've gone from a very illustration-y form of artwork to, I've been working very, very hard to get away from that. And the way I try and explain it to people is like, I want you to imagine all the paint fell out of the sky, fell onto that canvas, and it just happened to end up looking like that. Like, I don't want you seeing my hand in it. I want you to see the brush strokes, like sume brushwork. Like, if you do it right, the thought isn't there. It just happens, it just right out. And I was looking at Anne's stuff, and I was like, that's what you're doing. And I was like, how do you do that? And it was this really cool moment of having somebody say the exact single thing, and you happen to know enough about what you do and the language that all of a sudden it's like, of course. And it was literally that simple. It was paint for as long as possible with the largest brush that you have.
Huh.
And what the result is that you end up doing these blocking things out with the large breath, but you also start to really learn to control it. So you're making much, much finer line work and controlling it than more than you think you would.
Hmm.
And then it almost becomes like you block it, literally kind of block it out in these blotches. And then you start doing subtractive stuff off of it, where instead of trying to get it right the first time with the line that you put down, you're then going back with a darker color or whatever and cutting out the negative space, but with the same brush.
Hmm.
So you get just this really cool. I wish I don't even know it, for me it is a very visceral response when I see work
Yeah.
like this. Um, because it's like it's so organic to me, but it's focused and it works, and it's just and so she was like, yeah, when I went to school in Philly, I had a teacher, and this is specifically what they did, and that was the one big lesson. And I I love talking to and working with people who know their shit. I've been taking martial arts with this guy, and the difference between, when I'm sitting here trying to do something and then just watching him go, "Blah," and it's just like, wow, that hurts a whole lot.
Yeah.
And you were talking about failure and learning to
Hmm. Hmm.
failure, and something that he has said a few times about that was, we'd be talking about the end result, pain, damage. Um, and he was like, going through this, you have to reach a point where you're like, pain is fine. Pain is, I understand the difference between pain, which is going to happen doing this, and damage, which we are trying to avoid unless you absolutely need to do it.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot to be said in relation to failure. It's only a failure, like in the grand scheme of things, for the most part. Like you can use it as like, well, that failed. That
Sure.
equipment failed. Sure, right. But for you, for an individual, I think that it's only a failure if you don't learn from it. And sometimes learning from that is just going, okay, I don't want to do this anymore because I don't
Yeah.
feel qualified to do it. Or Donna is a very good artist. She doesn't practice it anymore, but when we got together, she was still doing all of that stuff. And one day she was like, I could get a lot better at this, but I would rather put all of my time and focus into the music that we were doing because it's like you have to pick enough of
Yeah.
one or the other to really, because we're still learning so much of this stuff. And she was like, so I'm not going to do that anymore because I want to take this time and use it for this. And ultimately time being the most valuable resource. So you could look at that as a failure for her, but it's also no, it didn't. It freed up
I think that's
knowing I'm never going to be as good at this as I want, but I can be as good at this as I want.
that's one of the hardest decisions I think anyone can make. Like being able to do that it feels so much like failure when
Particularly
you're doing it.
who you are,
Yeah. Even if it's not really core to your identity, but it's something you really like doing and recognizing like, I love this, like I enjoy this a lot, but like it is taking away from something else that is either more important or something I love more. Like that's a really hard thing to do. And I think it's to the point that I think both of us are kind of like dancing, have mentioned a few different times where like, self-reflection it can be painful. Like that's one of those things where like making that decision, I think is like a growth point that I don't think everybody gets in. Everybody has the opportunity, but I don't think everybody takes the opportunity to actually experience. But like my camera is very strategically positioned, and everywhere in this office is just like abandoned half finished projects, like all over the place. And some of it is, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what my office looks like. I imagine that we were very similar in that. But like, there's some things that I have looked at and said, okay, look, like I could take the time to just that way. Like I could master this if I put enough time into it. But there's a lot of other things going on and I just can't devote that time. But then there's other things where, sometimes you just set something aside half finished and 6 months, a year and a half down the road, you pick it up and you're like, oh, fuck, like I forgot how much fun this was. I do have a guitar. my teenage power chord years were not the last time I touched it, but I had gotten my first like good job, where it wasn't just like, I lived paycheck to paycheck for a very long time, longer than I should have. But when you don't come from money, like you don't know how to do money. But like my first job where like I was on a salary and like Tanya and I could like go out to dinner sometimes, kind of a job. I went and bought a guitar and I picked up Rocksmith is a computer game, but it's really more of a program. It's like Rock Band, but for real guitars. And it has exercises and it's got a bunch of songs that you learn, but you plug your guitar into it with a jack and everything. I remember picking that up and I'm like, man, I really missed this. Like I really missed like learning songs, and it got me out of the power chords thing and actually taught me like fingering and stuff. I didn't stick with it because it's another one of those things where like I can devote a lot of time to this and get really good, but I've got other shit I need to do.
I want to feel that you have a little more control over an idea.
Yeah.
I know enough to feel that I have learned enough about this, so I feel okay about like it's that I think it's part of that insatiable curiosity thing. Like there are so many, even I've written 50 or 75 records and I still know dick about music theory. I can fake it really well and I'm really good with tools. And I'm fine with that. Like, I kind of like it, like we were talking about with when I'm doing stuff with sampling. There's a great quote from Tricky. He's like, yeah, so I did this horn part here for the song. It's like, I don't know how to play horn and I wouldn't know how to do it the right way. And I'm kind of scared that if I did know how to do it the right way, I wouldn't have done that. And that may be a dissonance thing. I don't know. I often wonder about that, but I like it. It's like I feel that sometimes like not knowing how to do some of this stuff, like I can't sit down and play a piano, but I can program the fuck out of one.
Sure.
Commercial time. So, I'm trying to keep with a theme, but I don't have a ton, surprisingly, I don't have a ton of like Lovecrafty things, but we do have these. These are a pair of books that Donna and I did called Daughters of Lilith and Witches. And these are poetry and art collections where I will, we kind of have a system for it that we do, whereas I will draw artwork for this and kind of give her a title or a theme. And then she takes those, she takes them and just kind of runs with it, and what she makes is what she makes, and then hands it back over to me, and then I kind of do all the layout and everything else. They're pretty cool art books, and again, you can find these through Amazon. If you just look up Donald Lynch, you might be able to find them under my name. I'm not sure. They're put up by Raw Dog Screaming Press, who are our usual publisher, and just fantastic to work with. So if you're into dark art and poetry, please check them out. Thank you. I have to get really creative about that because there's like, well, I know this will work, so cool. And so you do have to, I don't know, I'm a big fan of limitations forcing you to get creative. Whereas, people I know that I've known some people who went to school to be a musician. And I think because they felt that gave them a leg up on everything, when they went out and did the touring thing, and it wasn't, they didn't get that. They didn't get a leg up. You still have to go out and you do the shows and you do the shows and you do the shows, and 10 people show up or 3 people show up or 500 people show up and you never know. I think that they had a real hard time. Yeah. Because they felt that they should have a leg up and it should be easier for them than it is for other people.
Cybersecurity is a very hot industry and it's very popular in universities. There's this concept that, there's just a billion jobs. And if you get a degree, then you'll be making hundreds of thousands of dollars right out of college and all this stuff. So I get a lot of questions, like either in classes I'm teaching or talks I'm giving from college students. How do I get started? What do I need to know? And I've dealt with a lot of interns also, like coming through like my teams or adjacent teams to me. And it is really fascinating watching college students who are doing a fantastic job in their, I don't get interns that are mediocre in their programs. And they're doing great. They're smart people, but they more or less had a brick wall the first time they hit like the real world, and just seeing the difference between academia and the profession. And like a lot of my like classes that I build or the workshops that I run are really just trying to bridge that gap of like, I'm going to try and give you a taste of what the real world is like and what kind of work you'll actually be doing out here, because the theory you're learning is great. And if you learn how to apply that theory, that will be fantastic. Mm-hmm. But until you can make that rubber hit the road, like you're worthless to me. Mm-hmm. And like, it's interesting because as a high school dropout, like I bounced off of college a couple of times. I've taken a couple of classes here and there, and I always get really frustrated because I'm a very professionally in my job, I'm a very practical application kind of a person. And I get into a school where they're like, this is the way we're going to be doing something. And it's like, well, that is neither the technically correct way to do it or the practically correct way to do it. They're like, well, this is the way the exercise works. And it's like, I don't give a fuck how the exercise works. Like, you're the reason that I have to do the bullshit work because you teach people this way. And then they get into the real world and they don't like, they think this is the right way to do things. That's a side rant. I shouldn't have gotten on that rant, but like, no, I think there is
because I don't know, who knows how many people are going to see this.
Sure.
But I think it applies to, I was talking to my buddy Michael last night about cooking, about culinary school. Yeah. And I was like, so, is that worth it for you? He's like, it gets you started. He was like, but if you really want to get into cooking, you gotta cook. Get a job at a diner.
Yeah.
Figure it out from there.
Yeah, you gotta cook, and especially, I mean, my brother's a cook. He's a chef. He doesn't like being called a chef. He's got a confidence problem, but he's a fantastic cook. But so I only know a little bit about. I'm very interested to see this episode, but like working in a kitchen is not working in your kitchen. There's shit that goes on that like. So not only do you have to cook a lot, so you know how to cook and what shortcuts you can take and what shortcuts you can't, but then you also got to work in a fucking kitchen. So you know how to work with other people and, not bounce off of each other and time shit correctly. And, working in teams.
I'll send it to you after we're done with this because I find it fascinating.
I would.
He is, he's one of those people who I think is very similar to us in that I recognize this problem with my system. How do I change that? This is what, like he was like, yeah, I for a while, I was that chef who yells at people, and then I realized that just wasn't doing the job. So now I have figured out these other ways. It's remarkable to me how many people don't realize it's okay to learn and revise their methods.
One of the smartest things I ever heard that changed the way I think about things is if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Mm-hmm. And like that goes beyond you need to hire smart people and work with smart people. What it really resonated to me was like you are never the best. Like you just can't be. You can't be. And frankly, no one can be like the idea that there's always somebody better, like is kind of this infinite paradox where, well, you find the best person and there's somebody better than that. Right. So like, to me, like you have to be willing to be in a room where you are the dumbest person because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. And be the dumbest person
and go, hi, I don't know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love teaching. I imagine you too. It's like, I love this thing. I want you to love it as much as I do. Please, let's do this so we can.
I wonder because I think our brains process things similarly, if not the same. One thing that really, really made me enjoy teaching was the teaching part, like being passionate at people and like seeing that reflected in them getting passionate is super rewarding. But what teaching actually forced me to do is my entire life up until the point I decided to get into teaching, I would intuitively grasp concepts very quickly. and then I would be proficient in them,
Mm-hmm.
but only if I did the things that I intuitively grasped,
Mm-hmm.
which was fine because, you know, I was successful or whatever. But what I found was when I started to try and explain things to people is that the reason if I tried to leave those boundaries, I would encounter trouble is because I actually didn't fundamentally understand what I was doing. I knew, yeah,
and you couldn't say why this is better than that. It's better
right.
because I know this one and I don't know that one.
Or just like, I know that this one's better than that because every time like this needs to be done, this is what I reach for, this is what everybody reaches for, it does the thing. But like when I started teaching, I realized that anytime I try and go off script, you do this, you do this, you do this, this happens. I'd be like, you do this, you do this. The reason that we're doing this, which is important for hacking, because you can't just like, I call them magic spells. Like you can't just say an incantation at a computer and things fall out. If you do that, it may work one time out of 1,000, but you're not a very effective hacker. You're not actually getting what you need done. You need to know why. So as soon as I'd be like, and the reason you would do this is just mind blank. And teaching and especially building any form of curriculum, whether it's ad hoc curriculum or otherwise, like before I went into a class about a subject, I found that I really, really had to learn the peripheral. And beyond that, it forced me to learn how my brain worked. And I think the last 5 years or so has really changed me as a person because I've really started analyzing how I learn, why I jump from one conclusion to another, where that like thought process goes. And this resonates with people I talk to. And I give this advice to people. They ask me like, how do you get into speaking? Or I want to get into speaking, but I don't think I have anything to say. I'm like, look, neither the fuck do I. Like, it's not like I'm a research scientist. I'm saying the same shit everybody else is saying, but my experiences and how I learned things and plugged things together is unique. And while my class says the same thing this guy's class does, I say them in my words. This guy says them in his words. For some people, his classes are going to be better. My class is going to be better for other people. And your talk is going to resonate with other people still because you have a unique perspective to bring to this. So when you build this stuff, like don't sterilize it. Like bring yourself to it because that's the thing I think people resonate with. So anyways, so teaching for me is like as much about self-discovery as I think it's been about spreading knowledge. So I was curious, did you find similar, like, did you have to evaluate your brain and like dig into that, or is art just so intuitive anyways? Like, I don't know. I'm curious.
Well, I've been teaching since I was probably about 25, just privately. Like I've never had like a, never gone to a school to teach. And it really cheeses me that I need to have a piece of paper in order to teach college level stuff. Because I'm like, I've thrown away more work than these people have done. But I think I do this thing, and I don't think I ever intentionally started doing it. But one day I caught myself, and I just every once in a while I'll catch myself doing it, and it's all the time that I do this. Whenever I'm doing anything with art or when I'm working on music. Because for me, working on music, and the reason I built that is because I want something that I was interacting with in the moment, like I do when I paint. But for most of the time, the stuff that I write that goes out on labels into the world, like songs, are very finding the sound and then making it work. And so there's a lot of cognitive stuff. It's not like emotionally playing the part. But when I'm painting or when I'm doing that, there's this tiny little other Stephen brain that is constantly narrating what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. To myself, it's constantly going, okay, I'm putting this down to balance out this. I am now glazing this because I want to tint it to this color to, for whatever the reason is. Or I'm now picking up my my graphite stick because I want to redefine this line work here, but I also want to add graphite there that I can then take with my brush and pull down to tone with. And I'll tell you, doing the which Facebook is now deleting, but doing the dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of live broadcasts of painting that I've done has I think just put me in that mindset now, even if there isn't an audience. Of just kind of like going, okay, Here's why I'm doing this. Is why I'm doing it. Um, and and I do the same thing when I'm working on music. That took me a long time to get better as I became a better producer because with writing songs now here in the future, and you can have 100 tracks, and really learning to kind of go, okay, we don't need 100 tracks. We need like I wrote this rock album a few months ago, and
Hmm.
it's got like guitar, bass, maybe a synth, vocals, drums,
Yeah.
maybe some atmospheric stuff. So like, if the drums are all on one track, that's like 8 tracks or whatever. Um, and it works, and it's full. Whereas with industrial, it's like, oh, this sounds cool, and this sounds cool, and how do I make it all come together? And learning how to do that. So I having done that and really finally getting how much you have to get rid of and how much you can't have there. I've gotten much more in my head. I'm like, okay, that's enough. Like that one part right there has enough frequencies in it, even if it's not technically a bass part. It's got those frequencies in it. So if I'm going to leave them there, that means I can't add a bass doing that. Like I have to. And so there's a lot of that kind of cognitively going through and going, okay, this is why I'm doing this, to
Yeah.
myself. Um,
That's fascinating that you have that kind of like running commentary. That's incredible. Yeah, I'm super jealous of that
I have a
concept.
very, very loud inner monologue. And it's extremely frustrating. It makes it
That's
very difficult to
wild.
do these kinds of things
Oh, that's
with
fair.
my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, like she's really amazing that we've been together as long as we have. Because like I mean, it's just like having somebody with TV static in their head all the
Oh,
time,
yeah.
and or like just everything. There's just so much going on constantly, and I'm not
Hmm.
like I built myself to be this creative machine. It's what I do, but I am by far not saying that it's the stuff that's kind of constantly going on. It's kind of like that meme, like I wonder what he's thinking about, if he's thinking,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and a good chunk of the time it's just really loud frog going, it's Wednesday. But but
I always think I was thinking of that Star Trek Next Gen episode where Data gets a girlfriend, and she's like, "What are you thinking about right now?" And he's like, "Well, I'm rebalancing the this, and I'm doing that, and I'm calculating this," and I'm just like, "Man, me too, dude." Like,
so Don and I had started dating. We'd been together maybe 3 weeks. I'm leaning against the wall, and she just kind of comes up on me, and she's just looking up at me, and she's like, "What are you thinking about right now?"
oh God.
And, and this was before the meds and before many other things. And I said, "Wondering how long it's going to be before you get boring."
Oh damn.
And I feel awful about that now. Absolutely true.
Sure.
But I would have, now I would not have, I would have known not to say that. But the flip side of that is that she went, well, this guy is either the biggest asshole I've ever met in my life, or he's the person that I need to be with for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So, just that in and of itself, I think, shows how amazing she is. Um, and and I hate that guy. I hate that part of me, and I've worked really, really hard to
Hmm.
because I don't want to hurt my friends,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
people that I care about. And when it's such a weird balance. So when Stoneburner went on the first tour, first time with Nathan, or before that, and I was getting ready to do it, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to come and play drums for this? I'd love to have you, but if you don't want to do it, that's fine." And it was very much if you want to do this, you can come. He interpreted, because he, I think, operates. He's so much more empathetic and nice than I am, but more emotionally viable than I am.
Hmm.
He actually wrote Don, and he was like, "I don't know if Steve really wants me or not," because, and she was like, "Well, why? What did he say?" And she said, "Well, he said this." Okay, no, he wants you. He just wants to make sure that it is your choice and your decision to do this.
Yeah.
Um, or, any other time that somebody comes up to her and goes, "I don't think Steve doesn't like me. Or, I don't think Steve doesn't like me because, he said this or this other thing, and I interpret it this way." And she'll go, "That's the problem. he is literally just saying exactly what he's thinking. There's
Yeah.
no emotional content beyond just here is this information.
I think, yeah, like, I get that a lot. You know what's something that really resonated with me. So you came out with that album, Blind Sight,
Oh, okay.
or Technology Implies Belligerence.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I had not read that book, so I went out and got the audiobook. And frankly, that was a mistake. Only because it was a fantastically produced audiobook, but that's one of those books that you need to be able to back up a couple paragraphs and reread a few times.
That's why I loved it. That's why I fell in love
Yeah.
with it, because every time I'd come up with this concept and be like, and I'd go and look it up,
Yeah.
and I loved that because it's like this is all real, just extrapolated.
But one concept in that book that really stuck with me, and I need to actually read it so other concepts can too. But when he starts talking about the Chinese room
Mhm.
and this concept of like, I get into this sometimes. I mean, I feel that I'm a fairly emotions on my sleeve, very empathic person, but also I recognize when I feel feelings from other people that I just have no reciprocating response for.
Yeah.
And I'll get into these moments where it's like the input is saying that this is what's going on. And I recognize that that output is what should happen. And I am perfectly capable of synthesizing that output, especially with, my theater background and my ability to lie. I can fully synthesize the correct response, but inside I'm just like that guy in that room, like passing this note to another note. And it's weird because at certain points in my life, and this was pre-medication, I think medication has helped a lot, but at certain points in my life, I just wondered if I know this isn't a proper medical term anymore, but if I was a sociopath, because there were points in my life where it's just like, I fully understand that this is what's supposed to be happening. And I understand that this is how it's supposed to make me feel and respond. And I will mimic that response.
Happening on this cognitive level.
Yeah.
And not here.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that I wasn't, or I suspected that I wasn't, because that was only certain times and not all the time. But man, when that man put those words, that concept to paper, I know it's a real concept, but when I read that, I was just like, it's that eureka moment when somebody says something in words that makes the concept click. I was just like, Jesus Christ. Like, I know exactly how that feels. I am glad that I don't know how that feels 24/7, as that character did, but like, fuck. It's such a weird, almost like not quite out of body experience, but that kind of like out of consciousness where you're just observing things happening and you're like, yep, this is how it's going to play out, I guess.
So, yeah, I loved that book so much that I stalked him and wrote him, and eventually I booked a show in Toronto specifically to meet him.
Oh, wow.
And because he can't come into the US.
Oh, okay.
Go read his Wikipedia page. It's crazy.
Oh, man.
And we get to the end of the night, and I'm like, look, I got to do this. We've been, it's like, I know it's weird because when it happens to me, it's always weird, but I got to tell you, I got a fan guy on you for a second. And I was like, I tried to give him this really truncated version of my experience in life and stuff. And I was like, my life for me is very much like Terminator, where it's like, here are these responses. And this is kind of how I get through it. I've learned and I've gotten better with the flow chart, which results in me not getting in fights, which is cool. But that Siri, the character of Siri, is the first time I have seen myself in another character. And the example that I did, because I sent you his interview. Did you?
Yeah. I've watched like half of it.
Okay,
yeah.
Well,
I'm still finishing it. Yeah.
This part of the story, I was because he, I was like, because there's a point in the story where his girlfriend is sick and dying, and Siri goes online and looks, how do I talk to a dying person?
Yeah.
And he spends so much time looking at that he actually doesn't deal with her. And I was like, and that for me was that moment was like, I would do that. That's exactly what would happen, because I would be sitting there trying to intellectualize it because I would want to do it the right way, as opposed to one of the things I am not proud of is when Donna's grandmother died. I kind of sat in the waiting room instead of being with her while that was happening. But to
Hmm.
me, my instinct in situations where it's like if I don't know what my role is, I will just go and sit in the corner.
Hmm.
And if you need me for something, I am there. Like I'm
Yeah.
completely 100% there if you tell me what you need. But and I to this day I feel awful about it because I just didn't know what the protocol was for it.
Sure.
And because well, my mother's still alive, and the other deaths I have not. I was there, but I didn't need that kind of. I don't need a lot of
Hmm.
support, I guess is the
Right.
better way to put it. Like I know myself really well as far as emotional needs. I imagine you're similar in that there are very few emotions, um, and so I don't think about like what should I have done at the
Right.
moment, and like but it wasn't me. I'm trying to get away from you, which I know is how it was interpreted, or that I didn't care. I cared very much, but I think I often feel like a tool in that if you need me, I am here to do this thing. But I also recognize I can be really egregious. And the
Well, you
last,
also don't know, especially things like that. Like, is this a families only thing? Like, you want to be alone with this. You don't want me intruding. There's
right?
like a
Like,
lot
yeah,
of nuance that
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I get that. I, fuck, there was a thought I had that I completely just went into the void. I don't remember. It'll come up again, I'm sure. Um,
Well, let's go to your job thing because I one of
yeah.
the fascinating parts about what you do is that social interaction. And can you like give me some 007 shit where you have to go in and like not just put on your fingerless gloves and hack the mainframe with a grid over
Sure.
the place, but actually go in and or interact with try and do the thing.
So yeah, I mean, so the breaking into buildings thing, I tend to not be as much of the social engineer. Like I said, a lot of times when people do social engineering,
Their
that's their job.
thing.
I've done more of what I've done on the physical side, which also isn't as much, but walking around buildings, checking out like where camera placements are. We did an engagement one time where we mapped from the CEO's office to out of the building. Like, is there a path someone could take without ever being on camera? So stuff like that. The electronic access control stuff. So, like cloning people's badges and using that to get into places or just bypassing locks to get into places. One of the things I try and do in general is actually not engage in any social engineering for the reason that I think it's often weaponized by management too often. So a lot of times what will happen is like if there's a report and the report is due to social engineering, we were able to execute X, Y, and Z, and this gave us access to do the bad thing. Oftentimes, especially in toxic environments, which unfortunately is too many in the corporate world, but oftentimes it's like, well, who the fuck was that? We're going to pin them to the wall and like nothing else gets done. Whereas, and it also, a lot of my job as a offensive security leader is a lot of PR with other teams to kind of be like, hey, we're not actually the bad guys. We're not actually trying to get you in trouble. Like, we're trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, which is make this company money. And we're trying to do it by helping you be better at your jobs from a security standpoint. So I find that engaging in social engineering internally is like antithetical to that effort.
Right,
Like a
you
lot of
want that,
people, yeah, people feel taken, no matter how early on in the maturity cycle, you don't have a lot of trust yet with your team members and your partners and other teams and stuff. And so if you took advantage of them in some way, that's how they'd feel about it.
right.
Not that you executed some playbook and it worked the way, of course, it was going to work because that's how it's designed. It's you took advantage of me and we're coworkers, so you shouldn't have done that. And so I find that my perspective is you really shouldn't engage in social engineering until things are a lot more mature and you've established that trust. There's almost like a more playful kind of like tag level,
like, oh, hey, you got me,
you got me, or oh, we got them this time, kind of stuff. And once you get that kind of banter, then you can start doing social engineering. We've done, this is a little more technical, but we've done, instead of like email phishing, which is very common and popular and well known, we actually start phishing like chat channels. So Slack is a very popular like workplace chat system, and so we just fish in Slack and just post things in Slack like, hey, ran into this problem, can somebody check this out? And that link will be malicious. Or, oh, we've got a customer dump here and I need help troubleshooting it, and then they'll download it and there's like a malicious payload in that, just to kind of get people aware. A lot of my job is education, even when I'm not teaching, but like just to get people aware, like, hey, just because it's not an email doesn't mean it can't be malicious. Like, you need to be thinking about, who is this person? Do I interact with them? Am I expecting this stuff? Like, what could go wrong here? But no, a lot of my stuff is very technical. We tend to do like, fingerless gloves, hack the mainframe kind of stuff. Let's see. So one engagement we were on, let's try and jazz this up a little bit. The thing I think Hollywood gets wrong most about hacking is that it is, when you actually see it done live, it's extremely boring. It's like 5 hours of like reading technical documentation, and then like 3 or 4 minutes of typing in commands, and then another like 6 hours of, reading technical documentation or like analyzing code, and then run a couple commands. Mr. Robot, the first season I think I watched, was actually pretty good, except for the timeline stuff. Like, the hacks were just too fast, but all the stuff that would go into it, the planning, I think was pretty good. But it's very dry. I used to stream hacking, and one request I would get a lot is, well, I would prep challenges. I would do a challenge, and then I'd do a walkthrough of like how I did it and what my thought processes were. And I'd get the request a lot of like, well, could you do it live? Like, don't do the challenge first, just like start it live and then work through it. And I tried it once, and we got about halfway through. It was like a 6-hour stream. I'm like, guys, like, this is not, like, nobody's having fun here. Like, this is not fun to watch. But like, I think the romanticism of hacking, I see this a lot in college people, is like, everybody wants to be the hacker. Everybody wants to be the red teamer or the cyber ninja or whatever. And then they get on their first engagement, and there's no guarantee that there's actually something to find. And you have to have a certain amount of thick-headedness to just beat your head against the wall repeatedly. And eventually you develop the intuition to be like, okay, there's nothing to find here. Let's beat on this wall now. But for a long time, you just have to have that kind of like stubbornness of, well, I'm just going to keep failing at this until something shakes out. But anyways, I mean, so like, we've done crazy shit. Like, I had a client one time that was a pretty big, it's like one of the bigger tech companies nobody's ever heard of, where they run the databases for many, many, many government and Fortune 100 companies. One engagement, we, within about, I said all that, and now I say within about 15 minutes of starting the engagement, we actually took over their entire cloud infrastructure. We actually had more access to control that cloud infrastructure than the ops team that controlled the infrastructure did. So like, we asked them, like, hey, can you give us accounts that would do this, so that when we do something, we can verify that it worked? And they're like, we physically can't give that to you. Like, there's no ability to give you this access. So no. And then, so 15 minutes later, we're like, okay, well, we have that access now. Thank you. God, it's funny because it's such an exciting career, and it's so abstract. Like, there's no thing, like, it's not like in hackers where like you hack the sprinklers and, right, you're like playing practical jokes on stuff. It's like, I've granted myself system administrator privileges so that I can like steal all of the source code that your company uses. Or, we've injected We've done things. There's a really well-known in the tech circles hack around a company called SolarWinds. And SolarWinds is a company that provides IT management software to like a lot of companies. And so what happened with them is their software development pipelines were actually compromised and malicious code was injected into it. And so that code would get bundled up and distributed to all these customers. And now all of these customers were compromised through this supply chain attack. So some of my customers have been software development companies. So we've executed things like that, where we've inserted ourselves into the build pipeline and inject code in flight. So it's not really detectable at where people normally audit code. It's really like, it's really just creative problem solving. It's a lot of, I think this is like survivalist training, but I get it from the Stargate show. It's like a, what do we have? What do we need kind of mentality. It's a lot of like, this is where we are. These are the levers we have access to pull. Does this get us what we need, or does it get us closer to where we need to go to get what we need? Or does it just, can we pull a lever to get more levers kind of thing? And really, like, you almost don't, people ask me what technologies they should learn. And it's like, there's too many. Like, I can't tell you like, learn these 5 and you'll be good, or just learn everything. It's like, what you should do is get good at problem solving, which is something like I learned in construction. Like every job I've had makes me a better hacker because it gives you more ability to kind of think on your feet and think creatively about problem solving. And then the technology comes. The technology is the easier part. You learn the technology as you go. That's why it's 5 hours of reading documentation and then running 4 commands. It's I don't know. I find it fascinating, but it's so abstract. It's hard to like get people that aren't in the industry jazzed about it, because they want to, I'm not saying this is what you're asking for, but like a lot of people want to hear the, oh, how did you set off the fire alarm and get everybody out of the building? It's like, well, those things generally aren't hooked up to the same networks that you're accessing. It depends on how their network's set up. It depends on how digitized that stuff is. A lot of times they're very physical things, and so you can't get access to them without getting on site. There's like a lot of physicalized network. This is kind of when you start getting into OT. So like people's physical access controls, like doors, are usually a separate, not even really a network. They're more an electronic installation. And so if you get on site and you get access to the panel, do I have it here? I don't think I do. I think it's down in the garage, but I worked at a game studio and they completely redid their whole physical access. So I have their old like door access panel that I can like wire up to, servos and stuff to like pretend doors open. But like, if you get access to that, you can clip in and start, doing whatever, or they'll have like little like serial connectors or something you can plug into and launch software. But for the most part, no, like they're generally, that's changing modern day. That's changing a bit where they are more and more networked. But
the smart devices.
Yeah. That's where that's really starting to come in. So these like prosumer companies are starting to do network-based access control. But like if you go into any military building or traditional office building that's been there for more than 10 years, like they're probably not upgraded to that newer stuff. They're very like separate kind of networks that you need to plug into like locally. Or they might have like a local Wi-Fi that if you get onto a system locally, you can like bridge into that. But generally speaking, like the types of stuff that like my targets often are things like IP, like intellectual property, or financial information or whatever. And so largely, unless you work for a high security environment that air gaps their critical systems, you don't even have to go on site. Like that's just not as big of a thing. A lot of times, especially with everybody kind of moving to cloud, cloud is really just computers that other people control.
Right.
And so like, sometimes I don't even have to interact with the target environment. I just find where their cloud provider is, or I find some cloud application that's in that environment and can leverage that to get into whatever data they're looking for. Some people very helpfully just put it on the internet publicly. You read about this sometimes in the newspaper where it's like they accidentally opened it to the world and a bunch of people got access to it before they closed it again. And that happens quite often too. So, the cool, like breaking into building shit, that's fun stuff. I've taken a couple classes for it. I know a lot about how to do it. And specifically, I know enough about how to do it to help our security physical teams, like harden those systems, but it's just not part of my job very often. It's very few. There's a couple companies I know that specialize in that, and they're kept very busy, mostly for like high security environments. But like outside of those very specialized organizations, you just don't see it a lot. It's kind of aspirational in the industry. Is like, oh, I want to do more of that, but there's not as much of a call to do that as there is to like pen test like web applications and stuff, because there's billions of web applications and there's hundreds of thousands of offices. So it's just a scale thing.
I don't think you were with us the year. At one point, Nathan penetrated the cruises.
Oh man. My first year, that's all I talked about. I'm like, I want to fuck with this boat so bad, but I know that their security is like so paranoid that if they were to catch anything, they'd just be like, you're off the fucking boat. But like everything I did, I was clocking, like, I want to pen test a cruise. If somebody who works for a cruise line watches this and you want somebody to pen test your boat, please let me know. I would be happy to do it. I would even do it. I think I might even do it pro bono. Like if I could like videotape it and we could do like a public kind of service thing, I would do videos about it. Like I was clocking like how the cards worked. I was clocking where the cameras were. Like the entire first time I was on the Goth cruise, like other than the concert nights, those were great. But like outside of the concert nights, I was clocking security all over the place. Is that kind of stuff is fascinating. I would love to do like Ocean's 11 style engagements. That would be a blast. There's just, there's not enough demand, and there are a lot of people looking to do that. So,
yeah, I bet. That's so. I love seeing the joy on your face when you talk about this stuff, because it's just
it's a blast. I mean, like it's sort of. I talk about it kind of like when I got into kendo. Kendo is Japanese fencing. I did an interview with a kendo guy. Oh, you did?
Yeah, I'll send that one to you too.
Oh, I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, because he's got like videos that he actually was able to like show.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah,
that's awesome. I got into it. I did it for like a few months in high school because the armor looked rad, and then when I got a bit older, like I actually could afford, like the armor and everything. So I got back into it. It just so happens that like one of the most dominant dojos like in the US is where I used to live in Orange County. So I trained under fantastic senseis and everything. But when I got into it, similar to when I got into hacking, I got into it because it looked cool and I thought I would feel cool doing it, which is not untrue. But like when you actually get into it, like the reasons for doing it and the actual benefit and the growth and everything has nothing to do with that. Yeah.
Cliff, the person I'll send it to you, he was like, if you are getting into this because you think you are trying to get somewhere with it, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Getting into this because it is what you do now, and it's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. It was my getting into new things with like low ego and pretending to be new at it came completely out of kendo. I was at a practice one time, and some of the junior people were there. Usually the adults and the juniors practice separately, but the head sensei's son, it was a small practice and juniors were together. And so I was practicing with the head sensei's son, and that guy, I was 30, early 30s, maybe. And this kid's like 10. I was like, okay, yeah, babysit the kid and I'll, be the target for this kid. And like, he ran circles around me. And I was like, okay, I don't know shit. And even when I think I know shit, I don't know shit. And just like, you need to be, not an empty vessel to be filled, but more like you need to be like, this is very Japanese, but like you need to be the river and you need to flow around the rocks and like just accept the things that are presented to you. Like you can't change that. And I kind of, yeah, like I applied that. It's funny. I was doing kendo right as I transitioned out of IT into security. And my first security job was really just kind of like IT security. It was the same job, but now I had security in my title. And I, it was very interesting the way that my career and kind of my life, my mentality changed as I pursued Japanese or any kind of traditional martial art. There's modern martial arts where the objectives are, fighting and protection and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's useful. But like, when your martial art is, well, give me a sword or a bamboo stick and let's get in armor and then we can fight. Like that's not practical. So there's got to be some other reason for it. And that focus on like personal growth through discipline and like mental discipline and physical focus was like kind of a crucible that I went through that I don't know that I would have been able to do offensive security if I hadn't gone through that principle. Like I see a lot of people in the industry that would have been me if I hadn't have gone through this kind of like emotional like change. There's a phrase that I use all the time in offensive security to kind of illustrate to people why offensive security matters in a way that isn't calling you bad at your job. And the phrase is a kendo phrase called kokenchiai, which is loosely translated, you learn friendship, brotherhood, love, whatever, through the crossing of swords. And the idea is that in kendo, you can't practice kendo. You can practice kendo, but you can't execute kendo alone. You have a partner. You always have a partner. You cross swords. You learn about yourself. You learn about your opponent through the crossing of swords. And like the friendship, brotherhood part of it, the love part of it is that like this is a thing that you do for each other. You are helping them learn about themselves and they are helping you learn about you. And there shouldn't be malice in that. Like you yell at each other, you hit each other, you're trying to win, but only on, in the circle. And once you're out of that, it's handshakes, it's thank you, it's being appreciative for that opportunity. And, yeah, I mean, that was like a massive side tangent, but like the getting, I don't think it's wrong to get into things because they look cool and you want to feel cool, but like the ability to like get something much more out of it than that, I think is like when people stay in a thing versus like, okay, I did it. It's kind of like me being a teenager wanting to play guitar. It's like, yeah, I impressed some girls at school playing this punk song. This is what I wanted out of it. And I'm done now versus like having some deeper connection to it that like really pushes you or pulls you through that experience.
Well, it becomes part of who you are, but not in a vanity sort of way. It becomes in a, no, this is something I know because I've done it. And I'm not, like, well,
it's like a piece of the collection, not the base of a monolith, right? Like it's now a part of who you are. It is not who you are, I think is the important part. Yeah.
I try and explain that to art students sometime. I'm just like, look, if you let's take my personality and wrap it up with the things I made. What can go wrong? And it's like, no, the things you make aren't you. The fact that you make them, if you want, that can be that's great. Define yourself. That's what I do. I mean, I make shit. That's what I do. And, but like, yeah, it's This has come up a few times now. One of my favorite parts of Neuromancer, one of the characters, is the ninja in it.
Hmm.
He doesn't do anything. He's just like, look, we all know why I'm here and what I can do.
Hmm.
So there's really no point in me showing you. Because if I do that, then if I have to show you, there's a problem.
Yeah.
I had a friend who very good martial artist, and he ended up working the Dory Club. Had gotten one altercation and quit because he was like, I know 20 different ways to kill somebody, and barely any to just subdue someone.
Hmm.
I need to not be doing this job. Or like one of the fascinating things about with the guy that I've been taking stuff from is like we'll get into talking about uh tournaments, and he was like, I was like, there must be a problem with you. You are trained to go from this move, this move, this move, this move, and at this step I break your arm. Well, you
Hmm.
can't do that in the tournament. And I was like, so there's got to be these situations where it's just like you just forget that your body just does the thing and that's it, and it's like that's why those moves are illegal.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a certain amount of like, I think there's a point of mastery where until you have full control, like I think some people feel that like automatic execution is mastery. And I don't actually think that's true. And
Mm.
I've been rediscovering that with the Gertie, where there's certain things where I'm like, oh, I need to go back to a faster tempo because that's how I know how to do this thing. And I check myself. I'm like, no, that just means that I've got some automated muscle memory. That doesn't mean I actually know this thing. That doesn't mean that I'm doing it. And I think mastery really is like being able to choose and execute the level required to do what you need to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's something I admire in artists. I recognize myself being able to do it in other disciplines, but in art, and because I don't practice it, it's not that I couldn't. But like I always have a problem with knowing when I've put enough and not putting too much, or knowing when I've removed enough and not removing too much. Like having that level of mastery of saying this is where we need to stop is like that is what mastery is in any discipline that you're in. And I often find myself when I recognize that like what the level of effort it would require to get there in a certain skill, sometimes kind of back to that point about with Donna, but sometimes I do it maybe too frequently. As soon as my brain says, aha, I actually know what the path is to this. I know how long it's going to take me to do that. And my brain's just like, nah, dude, like you're not going to do this every fucking day for 10 years. Like how realistic is that?
Yeah,
and some things I say,
hours thing, it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
you're like, oh, okay, well that's where that is.
yeah. And what's interesting about it is that it's not kind of calling back from earlier. It's not just 10,000 hours of like rote performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's 10,000 hours of like deliberate and like analysis of practicing. Am I doing this correctly? Oh, now I'm doing this correctly. Let's fix things every kind of time. And when things grab you, when that thing kind of like grabs a hold of you and you're like, okay, I have to do this. Then yeah, of course you're going to spend an hour a day for 10 years. Like sometimes I find myself on my Gertie, I'll check because I leave my tuner on mostly as a way to track time, but like I'll check my screen time on my tuner app at the end of the day. And it's like, oh, it was on for like 2 hours. It's like, well, I set out to practice 30 minutes a day. So that's pretty fucking good, but there are other things where sometimes it's just like, well, 15 minutes is up. I guess I'm doing something else, and I've found that I need to allow for my brain to just do that of like, I'm better when I don't have to work 9 to 5 and just you are productive during this time. It's like, maybe 9, never 9, maybe like 11 to 2, I'm productive. And then that night from like 10 to 3, I'm productive. And it's like, well, it's all the same. Like that's,
that's how I do stuff. Like I will, I get up and I've got a really weird schedule. Like I get up, I take my meds and then I go back to sleep while my meds kick in.
oh, wow.
And then and then I break things into shifts. I have night shift and day shift. And one of the rules I give myself is like I generally if I have to do anything with the outside world, it's day shift. But like if it's something that's maybe, I just don't want to do, My
Hmm.
rule is I can commute it to night shift, but then I have to do it.
Then it has to get done.
Uh, um, I've gotten into this in our conversation, but one of the things that people really hate, my opinion on this one, is that I think H.R. Giger was a hack, and he was very, very good at a trick. And he took
Yeah.
that trick and he changed the style, changed the medium of the trick to sculpture in some cases. And if you look at his original work, his early stuff that he was doing in school, like it's actually got a lot of variation to it. But he found this one thing that worked, and more power to him. We all should. He's far more famous than I am. But then you look at Picasso, and Picasso, I always hold up as like love him or hate the guy. He was an asshole, but he defines an artist because it's like he came out of the gate and he was amazing. He was doing better paintings than I will ever do at 14. And then he did his blue period, and that was cool. And then he got bored of that, and he got frustrated with the fact that you couldn't see somebody all at the same time. So he invented Cubism. And then he did Cubism for a while, and then he got into this whole minimalism thing. And to me, art is about that exploration. It is about kind of going, okay, how far can I push this? And then sometimes you go, okay, well, this is how far I can push this, but I'm really interested in these other things. So you're making a conscious choice to do X, Y, or Z, and it's not like if you only know how to do one thing, it's a trick.
Yeah.
But you can do lots of things, and they're all different tricks, but at least you're making that choice across that. Um, one of the one of the most fucked up things and it changed me, and I hate her for having done this because of the delivery, but it was absolutely true, and it's still embarrassing. I'm going to tell the story anyway. Um, I was in my first year at school, and I was really, really into Sandman and uh, Dave McKean's covers. And I
Mm.
really love it. Like I'd never really seen anything where it was that mixed media, but it was still cohesive and figurative, and it told sort of a story. And that's always been my trip, much to the dismay of my art teachers at Corcoran. Um, and I at the time I think I had this big piece of slate and some just wire mesh and all this other stuff. And I was kind of making this awesome blush, and I was drawing onto it. And my teacher asked what I was doing, and I said something, and I was like, well, the style I'm working in right now, and she's like, stop. She was like, the fact that you think you have a style is laughable. You will not have a style until you are in your 40s and you have done many things and you're able to make the choice of what you're doing. And while she was absolutely right, that's one of the meanest things I think I've ever had anybody say to me. And now, being on the other side, of just not just a 40, but from a teacher standpoint, I get it because there have been times where you may have experienced this with teaching. But definitely with a creative thing, one of the things I've noticed is if you're not really, 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 really painfully clear about things, the person you're working with will find one little hole
Hmm.
and then stretch that hole out and go through it, which removes all of it. It's like, I have to go and go like, look, I'm explaining this to you so that you understand why that's not working on these multiple levels. I'm trying to be as clear as possible. I'm sorry if that hurts. Actually, I'm generally not. I have this horrible idea that, if you're not crying after a critique, I'm doing something wrong. But the reason for that is it is important that you know that both of us know what you don't know. Or both of us know what you suspect. Like I know you're trying to get away with something. Like I hear you're fudging your hands right here because hands are hard, but you're
Hmm.
fudging, and we both know that now. And you know that I know as a teacher that we're doing
Yeah.
that. And I am doing that because I want you to be better. I don't get any satisfaction about saying this is bad. I just want you to get better, and the clearer I am, and
Well, and
less chance you're going to go.
some people think, they don't necessarily think that they're like getting one over on the world, but they're like, well, since this has never been pointed out, it must not be important. Or
Mhm.
like, oh, like I'm fudging it. People say they fudge stuff too, so it's fine. And it's like, well, yeah, that's fine. It's better if you know how to do it the right way and you realize in this case it's not important, so you can fudge it.
Mhm.
or
Well, I
like
do that shit all the time. It's like, yes, I
yeah,
could actually spend 5 hours to do this much, much better, but I'm not getting paid for that, and I don't really care. I'm not invested, so that works.
one of the things that I attribute to getting getting into offensive security, it took me a long time to get into it. And my first job in offensive security was building and running a team, which was wild because A, I'd never done offensive security, and B, I've never been in management. But one of the reasons I think that happened is I started doing some hacking competitions, and because I had spent so much time in tech, I knew all the shortcuts. Like I knew the mistakes that I would make or the stupid shit that I would do just to get something to work, or I knew where the skeletons were buried. And so when I got into hacking, I was just like, oh, I've built this system. This is probably how this is going to go. And like knowing enough to know when it's okay and when it's not okay to take shortcuts, I think is really important. Another thing that I really love myself when I observe art or participate in art is when things are so passively detailed that they can be abstracted to the point where like you can tell from the high level narrative in a story that all of this stuff has been written and is well understood by the author, and it's so well understood by the author that they can just like say something about it and move on.
It's like
Kind
the
of
spherical
stuff.
spaceship,
The what?
spherical spacecraft.
Yeah,
It's like this idea that any really, really advanced civilization, they will have everything down so smooth,
sure. Yeah,
that
yeah, and like, well, and then in physical medium, it's like what I love even is when you can tell that there is a thing that is obscured, but the thing was fully rendered, and then it was obscured over. Like, so the concept of hands, it's like, well, you didn't really render your hands and then you obscured over it, which is fine because it's obscured anyways. There's some sort of fog or something that you painted over it or whatever. But if those hands were actually well rendered and then you obscured them, the execution would be so much more vivid. Maybe that's not what you're going for, but like being able to do that is really important. And like, it's one of the reasons I don't think I've ever I would love to write a novel, and I hope one day I can just like take a year off and do it. But I know myself, and what I would need to do is like fully execute the world, and then I could write a story in it, because then the story just falls out. And I love that kind of like incidental kind of thing where like everything is so well ideated that whatever you're trying to execute just falls out of it because of course it had to. That's the only way it could have fallen out, is because this is so real that the story or whatever comes out of it.
well, it's like beehives,
I love that. Oh yeah.
Hexagons are the shape, and that's what we see, but that's because the construct of the beehive, that is the most practical form for those to exist in.
Well, even like anthills and stuff, like they've done analyses of anthills, and these are relatively unthinking creatures at kind of the basis level of unthinking creatures. And when they started analyzing anthills, there's like thermoregulation to it. There's waste disposal areas. There's like all this wild stuff that's just like, yeah, man, when things need to happen, like this is the way they're going to happen. It's like spontaneous evolution. It's like, this is just the way that thing needs to render for it to be real and to be practical. And
billions and billions of years of, again, trying it every other way and work. So, the ants, not consciously, but they know that, if we keep all the waste over here, it's not poisoning this food that we're growing over here. They don't even know they're growing it. They perform these actions. They have food. Or like with octopuses. I talked about that with Donna, like how they don't even know they're changing color. And they're not even going, I need to go to there where it's safe. All they know is that they are more safe on rocks that look like this.
Cuttlefish change colors in the dark. Like, what the fuck?
One of the coolest moments I had on one of the cruises is I was swimming and I ran across this line of cuttlefish.
I was there.
Oh, were you? Yeah.
Yeah. That was the second year we were there. And like, I was like, are those octopi? I was like, they are way too small to be octopi. And then I think it was when we were talking later that I'm like, fuck, I saw cuttlefish and I didn't even know it. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like laid out in this
It was out. It was
feeding from just one direction.
Yeah.
Like exactly the same depth.
It was one of the turtle snorkeling things, right? Yeah. I was there for that one. Yeah, that was incredible. I was like, damn, I wish I would have known I saw cuttlefish. I would have freaked out about it more. Right.
I've seen octopi twice. And one time I managed to get down and get a photo with one, and I got it right as it turned bright white and shot off. You can really clearly see it. I was like, oh, I really pissed it up. We were in, I want to say Turks and Caicos, but swimming along, and you know, you're in there, and yeah, it's not a lot of fish, so you're picking up like cool little rocks, you know, inside this collection I was just swimming with. And I look down, I see these three little green, very pretty rocks right in a row. Swim down, like, oh, that's cool. I'm gonna get that rock. And there was a hole next to the rock. And I look down and I just see, like, holy shit. So I swim back down and I put one of my rocks down with those rocks. And a few seconds later, tentacle comes out, grabs the rock, takes back inside. It was like, my gift has been accepted. And it was just one of those cool, like, way to go, octopus buddy.
Oh, you know,
man. Like here we are communing across species.
Octopi are like the corvids of the sea. Like they're stupid smart and they have problem solving capability and they're just really fucking cool.
And they have 8 brains. They've got a brain in each of those tentacles, which I didn't even know.
Wild.
That was a Peter thing. He told me that. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. Like I said, I only got through the first bit of that, but I didn't realize that he was like a marine biologist by trade. That's fascinating.
Yeah,
most
so fucking smart. It's not even funny. And remind me when we're done with this, because I know it's under an NDA. There's something he did recently that's really fucking cool and required a serious amount of balls. So
damn, that's exciting. Yeah, the most fascinating people are so. You know, like they're so multidimensional. Like another very formative thing, I think in my youth, I think I was a teenager, but there was a guy that was like a friend of a friend. It was like a friend of a friend's dad. And we were all at the friend's house and this guy came over and we were talking for a little bit and he was in IT. And so, you know, we were just talking and I had mentioned Linux because I was just kind of getting into it. And he's like, oh yeah, I do that. I know that too. And it was very casual. It was very kind of off the cuff. And we just kind of moved on. It wasn't like a big deal, even though at the point in my life that I was at, I thought it was a big deal. And it made me realize that like you can be multifaceted and like know stuff that you don't have to talk about all the time to get people to realize that you do that. And that level of kind of just not quiet or even just, you know, humble, but that level of just kind of confidence, like was really impressive to me. And it made me realize that like confidence, like is the superpower. Like, and I think, I mean, growing up goth, I had to realize that too. Like, you know, walking down the street in a surfer village in a dress or a skirt, like you just have to, like, you'll get picked on if you don't carry it off. Like, if you don't just fucking make it work.
Yeah, you just don't give a shit.
Yeah. If you don't give a shit, middle-aged people were complimenting like the 17-year-old guy in a skirt. Yeah. They're like, wow, that is a fantastic outfit. And you're like, thanks, yuppie. Like, you know, like that's awesome. And it made me realize that, like, you know, especially now in the internet, the age of the internet, like there's every little micro niche subculture is now massive. It used to be, you know, maybe like there were 2 goths at Carlsbad High. Both of them are in this house. Like subcultures, you kind of had to like either just brood it out until you got old enough to cast a wider net, or you just didn't do it. And now with the internet, like every subculture is massive. Like you have access to any other person that's interested in that in the world. And it has resulted in some monolithic personalities, but it's also resulted in these very diverse and broad subcultures where people are just willing to be themselves in their style in public. And the only difference is now they know that that is an acceptable behavior. And if you understand that internally, then, people want to give you bad looks. That's their fucking problem. Right. And like, it's great. I love seeing so much more style. The only thing that makes things fashionable is general acceptance. And if you just don't give a shit about general acceptance, then you're fashionable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
I was saying on another one of these how like it literally never occurred to me that people buy clothing to be accepted socially. Like until probably like at one point I was like, oh, I guess that is a fact. I guess that is a thing that exists, because in my head it was always like, I wear this because it is comfortable or it looks right or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, yeah, it's a tool for communicating, just in the same way that certain animals are, puff up when they want to scare you away. Well,
Adam Savage, sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
Adam Savage has a TED talk on cosplay where he talks a lot about like clothing as a communication device. That's fascinating. If you haven't watched it, please do.
Yeah.
I watch it probably a few times a year. It's very good.
Yeah. I love that, and this is something that's come up on a few of these, is these other languages that we use to interact with people, and to also just to express ourselves. One of the things like one of my favorite parts about touring is we'll go and we'll do a show somewhere and everything's set up. I hate being there when doors are open and having people come in, because I don't want to know how many people are there or not there.
Yeah.
Fine, because you're still gonna get the same show, but like I just don't want to have to be aware of it. So I will always tell Donna, I'm going to go on my walkabout. And she's always like, well, be really careful. I'm like, no one will fuck with me. I always carry weapons with me anyway as needed, because we're loading in and out at night. But like just growing up in DC and spending time, like one of the things that I thought was really interesting is when I realized that a lot of the inner city people will see punks and there's this immediate sense of, oh, disenfranchised. Where we are all,
yeah,
hey, you don't have what we don't have either.
Yeah.
And so there's always this like, hey, you do your thing, we'll do our thing, we'll nod at each other and go by, like, hey, punker, or whatever.
Yeah.
And except for the guys that tried to mug me that one time, but otherwise, yeah.
There's always, the people that are looking to prove themselves, or generally, but yeah, that's all a level of communication, body language, how you carry yourself, knowing how to carry yourself in certain neighborhoods. That's all social engineering. That's all observing your environment and learning how to, interact and navigate through that environment.
Yeah, you'll be just fine. Don't run around clutching your purse or your thing.
Yeah. Keep
eyes in there, because
eyes forward. Yeah, don't be looking around. Don't look lost. Eyes forward, slightly down. Don't make eye contact unless you need to. Make sure they're aware. Absolutely. They're there. But yeah, like
a buddy of mine, he would do a thing. He'd be like, too, like if I'm going somewhere like that, it's like I just get 2 coffees, and one I drink, and the other one I just hold on to while it's nice and hot.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
All right. Well, this is run longer than usual, but 11 here. But it's been fantastic, and I think we could probably go on considerably more. And I think that next season I will probably be bringing a few people back, because there's just so many more.
I would love that. I will talk anyone's ear off about random shit. I love this. I love we talked about this earlier. Like, you're curious and I'm curious. We both have a lot to say about stuff. So yeah, this has been super fun.
One of my favorite quotes from Dune, even though it's not my favorite book, but there's so much in it that I like. Is the one of the first things Muad'Dib learned to learn was how to learn.
Yeah,
and like learning. I've said this before. It's like learning's fucking cool, and not like I a few episodes into this, I was just thinking about how every day we get these, as an artist and George, just a curious person, you have these incredible opportunities to just pick just little things up from people. I was thinking about how, I think we take it for granted, because so many of the people that we know, that you and I personally know, are these really dynamic and like engaged with life people. the ones who an opportunity came up and they said, I don't know what I'm doing, but sure, let's go.
Yeah.
And but I'm doing this. I was thinking about how aware I am of the people that don't do that, and they just kind of are. This is maybe it just never occurred to them they could, or whatever. They never just found the thing, and part of doing this is hoping that maybe that people will realize it's like there's no difference. Literally the only difference between this side and the other side is it's just that most of us at some point went, I don't know what I'm doing, but that sounds cool. Let's go see what happens.
The way I talk about it to people is sometimes people don't know that they have permission to do things. Like learning stuff is learning that you have permission. Like, yeah, like some people, the way you live life is, you went to school, you went to college, you got your master's degree, you got your job, you live your job, you have kids, you die, you pass your stuff on to your kids. That's life. They know that from like age 5.
Right.
But they don't know that you can just stop going to work and take a year off and travel. Like they don't know that like you don't have to work in an office. You can work in a bar or a coffee shop or be an artist or,
and those are
like whatever.
You can still get.
Yeah.
The Michael again from last night, because he was saying, it was like, this is the first, when I started cooking, it was the first time I didn't just walk out of my job.
Yeah.
Can you explain, maybe quantify for people watching this, maybe why? And he was like, yes, because it uses every single thing that I am interested in. Like, I find this fascinating, this fascinating, this fascinating. All of those are represented in doing this. And, I remember the first time I went on tour and I caught myself kind of going, this is the first time in my life everything I know how to do is relevant, And so, yeah, it's, so you figure out what those needs, your personal hierarchy of needs is.
Mm-hmm.
And God, I hope people can, because there's so much misery. And I think that you are taking advice from somebody who looks like this, but seriously, I mean, like, things are hard for me, but I do what I love, and I'd rather live a hard life than
live an interesting life.
Yeah.
A full life. That's the goal, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can too.
It's
the 5 people who watch this, they'll be like, yeah.
Look at all these people you've had on your series that, like I think that's part of the power of these kinds of things. It's just showing as many examples as you can, so that eventually one of them clicks and says, oh shit, that sounds like me. I could do that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Representation matters, et cetera, et cetera.
One of the things I've been really working on is, like, if I don't know it, I want to have them on. And I just remembered earlier that the oddly enough, a guy that my mother is friends with is a brony, and I was like, I really want to come on, because it's like, at first I was like, man, it's a really weird, and then I was like, you know what, fuck it. If it allows people who might not have innate social skills or whatever a architecture for interacting, you're not preying on our person. If that fucking works for you, because everything I see about that culture, it's just like, we just want everybody to be happy and cared about. And this just happens to be the grid that we put that on. Yeah. And I think
that would be great. I would absolutely watch that episode. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope it works out, because like the same thing happened when I was thinking about like furries at one point, and I was like, and eventually I was like, no, same thing. It's really cool that they have this thing. My only real fear is that you're literally masking people who could very much be bad.
Yeah. I think that fear is rational. Well, I think it's rational in that I think it's understandable to have that as like an immediate reaction. But I think it's similar to that, the same fear that, well, if we allow people who look like men, but we don't think they're men, into these restrooms, there will be problems. And it's like, I understand where that fear comes from, but there's no documented case of that ever happening, right? Like that's not actually what ends up happening. In fact, observations conclude that it's a net positive for fucking everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but I think that's, there's a lot of furries in IT, like a shocking amount of furries in IT. And so I think, coming through my early 20s, kind of having, I think, the first gut reaction that a lot of people have when they first learn about furries, into meeting a lot of them and coming to understand their subculture a little bit more, especially being a fucking goth. Like, I'm sure, like lots of people think the same about us. So like but it became one of those things where it rapidly turned into the other thing that you said, which is, look, these people have found a framework to care about other people and connect with other people. And generally that community is all about acceptance and making sure people are happy and uplifted. And that, whether I participate in it or not, is fan-fucking-tastic. So yeah, that would be great. Bronies, I know a lot more about the furry culture than I do the brony culture, so I'd be fascinated to watch that. I hope that works out.
I just remembered one other thing I really wanted to say, just really, really quick. You brought up people's drinks at venues and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
on tour, and one of the bands we were on tour with, the one of the women in it got roofied.
Oh man,
watching it happen in real time. And watching, like, we had to get her to a hospital on tour, like on the way to the next show. And then Donna got roofied at one point, and like, yeah, like if you ever suspect anything like that's happening to somebody, jump on it, because like, it fucks people up. It's not like it just knocks them out and then they're able to. No, both of them were throwing up and just like, yeah, it's really an awful.
It's terrible that people have to worry about that shit, like when they're just trying to have a good time. But unfortunately that is the world we live in. But also, like, this is, I mean, kind of to my examples earlier, like, these are things that shouldn't just be on the people to protect themselves about. Like, we as a culture and as a society can watch out for each other and collectively make those spaces not only safer for people, but also unwelcoming for the people that perpetrate that. So like, A, obviously everybody should be on their guard, but B, like, be a good neighbor, watch out for people around you, and, mutual aid, et cetera, like, without getting too much on a soapbox. But yeah. Like,
yeah, I know it's hard not to, but like, man, I always say, I was like, I've had my fist up the ass of the scene since I was a kid, and I love it. I care about it so much, and I hate when, just bullshit happens.
I agree.
Anyway, where can people find you?
Oh my God. I used to be very, very perpetually online. I am less so now. I've got a YouTube channel that is very intermittently active, where I do InfoSec education stuff that's just under my name, Derek Rook. I am also on Blue Sky under Derek Rook. I have a much bigger Twitter presence, but I haven't been on Twitter since the obvious time that people haven't been on Twitter, so that's not active. But you will find me on there. It's just not active. But yeah, I think Blue Sky is probably like the place that I'm the most, if people want to see what I'm doing or reach out to me. Otherwise, like, if you're in the InfoSec scene, I am at conferences and I give talks quite often, and I don't have one scheduled right now, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time. So,
excellent. Thank you so much for being part of this, and we will continue this.
Yeah, of course. This was great. Thanks so much for including me.
Absolutely.
It's yeah.
So thank you so much.